He spent 2 years drowning in debt after a scam ruined his life, finding comfort only in a dark web novel he read 100 times. Special reward unlocked. Target acquired. Then a corrupted system killed him and dumped his soul straight into the story as Prince Lan of Frieren. The problem is that this prince is a canon villain destined to end up decapitated. Stuck in a body with zero magic and surrounded by royal monsters, his only advantage is meta-knowledge and a bizarre transformation ability. If he plays by the rules, his head rolls in 3 years. So he chooses to tear the script apart instead. What follows is a high-stakes battle of wits against mind-controlling royals, corrupt officials, and divine forces. He will manipulate war heroes, forge illegal alliances, and rewrite the fate of the whole empire. Even the original protagonist is just another piece on his board now. It is time to take control of his own story. The game starts right now. He really shouldn't have listened to that guy. That is the one thought echoing in his head right now. Cut to a slick guy in a tailored suit sliding a document across the table. He has that predatory salesman grin, telling our dark-haired lead not to overthink it and just sign on the dotted line. Our guy holds the pen, sweat dripping down his face. He's incredibly anxious, weighing this deeply suspicious offer while the silence stretches out. They are sitting in a modern cafe. The young man cautiously asks if this proposed deal is actually as safe as it sounds. The suit guy violently slams both hands onto the table, making the young man jump. He starts aggressively shouting, reiterating that he explicitly told him not to think too hard about the contract. Then the suit guy switches tactics, offering a smooth smile and an open hand. The young man asks if he is supposed to go scam his high school friends now. The suit guy waves it off, giving him a manipulative speech about principal protection and compound interest. He leans in, promising that leaving his money with him will make it multiply effortlessly. He claims he only reached out because he cares deeply about him like a brother. A dark flashback hits. Our guy is wearing a black mourning suit at his own father's funeral, forced to take urgent work calls while standing next to the memorial altar. The scammer's voice echoes over the memory, mocking him for working during a funeral. The young man stares at the floor with hollow, dead eyes. The scammer keeps patronizing him, faking sympathy and saying it broke his heart to see him groveling to his boss. The scammer flashes a toothy grin. Our guy admits to himself that he wanted to snap the moment his father was brought up, but he was completely powerless to do a single thing about it. His hand trembles as he scribbles his signature onto the document. Clinging to the desperate hope of genuine goodwill was his only option because he had 0 choices left. The suit guy adjusts his glasses with a sinister, triumphant smirk as dark energy crackles around him. The narration bluntly concludes that our guy acted like a total fool. 2 agonizing years have passed since that life-ruining moment. The camera pans down a dimly lit apartment hallway absolutely littered with empty liquor bottles. Warm light spills from an open bathroom door at the end of the corridor. Our guy is huddled on the bathroom floor, gripping the toilet bowl for dear life while violently emptying his stomach. He looks up, deathly pale, drool hanging from his mouth, and massive dark circles under his eyes. He curses internally, realizing he just threw up the first real meal he had eaten in ages. He staggers barefoot out of the bathroom and into his trash-filled apartment. The narration introduces him as a standard 28-year-old guy living a life that falls way below ordinary standards. He slumps heavily onto the edge of his bed, looking completely hopeless. The scammer who ruined his life vanished a year ago, leaving him buried under a mountain of debt like a walking corpse. Sitting at his messy desk, he stares at a web novel titled Dark Header. He figures he has 5 hours before his miserable part-time shift starts. This novel is literally the only hobby keeping him sane. He pulls the dark book off the shelf, bargaining with himself to just read for 30 minutes. Settling onto his plaid bedsheets, he opens the book. He has probably read this exact novel over 100 times, but he still loves it. He practically has the entire plot permanently burned into his memory. A faint, peaceful smile actually crosses his face as he turns the page. He is genuinely grateful to this book for giving him a brief escape from his hellish reality. Suddenly he freezes. His eyes widen in total confusion as something bizarre catches his attention. He glances over his shoulder toward the apartment window. Glowing purple feathers are unnaturally drifting past the glass outside. He asks out loud what those things are doing here. Sweat beads on his cheek as he stares at the window. He mutters that they look exactly like glowing black crow feathers. Without warning, blood violently erupts from his mouth. A surge of dark blue energy crackles across his face as intense, paralyzing pain strikes his body. Dark crimson blood splatters all over the open pages of his favorite novel. His pen drops as he groans in sheer, unadulterated horror. His silhouette clutches his chest while his eyes glow bright blue through the shadows. Wild crimson and violet energy surges across him as he screams internally, wondering what is tearing his chest apart. Enveloped in swirling waves of dark purple magic, he collapses off the bed onto his knees. The The novel hovers in midair beside him. He grips his throat, realizing he cannot breathe. He slumps weakly against his mattress, blood streaming continuously from his nose and mouth. His vision fades as he bitterly mourns the pathetic end to his pathetic life. He lies completely motionless in a pool of his own blood. The magical wisps slowly settle around his limp body. He asks himself if this is truly how his miserable story ends. Blood trickles down his pale, dying face. But just as he tries to accept his fate, something incredibly powerful surges up from deep inside his soul. The smug, grinning face of the scammer flashes vividly in his mind. Even on the brink of death, the final thing he has to think about is that bastard. Radiant purple feathers and shadow tendrils swirl wildly around his body in the dark bedroom. He mourns that he is dying without ever accomplishing a single thing. A glitched, corrupted system window suddenly shatters the darkness. The text is mostly broken, but it offers a special reward and a target. His eyes snap open, flashing with brilliant blue light amidst floating feathers. He gasps in shock, suddenly realizing he is wearing a fancy white medieval lace shirt instead of his cheap t-shirt. He sits up sharply on a grand canopy bed draped in rich blue satin. He looks around the opulent room in absolute shock, frantically wondering if this is all some insane fever dream. The camera zooms in on his left eye, revealing a vivid cyan iris sparkling with starlight. He is completely disoriented and terrified. He takes in the luxurious palace bedchamber, with its high ceilings and ornate architecture bathed in eerie blue moonlight. He mutters in total disbelief. He presses a hand to his forehead, completely perplexed. He looks off to the side with wide eyes, trying to process the strange physical sensations of his new body. He realizes a massive black crow is resting comfortably against his chest, affectionately rubbing its beak on his shirt. He stares down at it, wondering why a wild bird is acting like a clingy pet. The crow suddenly spreads its glossy wings and flaps away into the dark room. A whole flock of crows soars out past the high castle windows into the night sky. He watches their reflection in his glowing blue eye, wondering exactly where he ended up. He steps up to the window and looks out over a massive European-style fantasy city illuminated by 3 different colored moons. The realization starts to click into place. Gazing at his own reflection in the moonlit glass, he accepts the truth. This is definitely not his tiny, trashy apartment. The reflection stares back, showing the incredibly handsome face of a dark-haired young nobleman. The narration drops the reveal. He is transmigrated into the body of Prince Lon of Frieren. A sudden, frantic knocking at his chamber door makes him stumble backward in panic. He yells for whoever is out there to wait, faking an excuse about feeling unwell. The heavy wooden door bursts open anyway. A terrified young maid in a traditional uniform stands there holding a food tray, her eyes widening in pure shock at the sight inside. He is currently sprawled face down on the ornate carpet, clutching his head and groaning as a massive wave of dizziness hits him. The maid nervously backs away, stammering that she will come back later. Meanwhile, our guy confirms his worst fear. He really is stuck in the body of Prince Lon of Frieren. Clenching his dark hair, he pieces it all together. This world is the exact setting of his favorite fantasy novel, Dark Header. A dramatic overlay shows the shadowy, regal silhouette of Prince Lon of Frieren. He has officially possessed the Empire's notorious 7th Prince. A brutal image of a severed head spraying blood flashes across the screen. The 7th Prince is a canon villain whose only purpose in the story is to die a miserable, early death. He screams internally over his doomed fate. Sitting solemnly at his wooden dining table, he rests his head in his hands. He is incredibly frustrated that out of every possible character, he got stuck with a doomed villain. A middle-aged man with slicked-back silver hair and pince-nez glasses looks down at him coldly. He formally introduces himself as Sane. Heavy shadows cover our guy's face as his eye widens in shock. He instantly recognizes Sine from the novel as the 7th Prince's personal secretary. Sine stands smoothly beside the trembling maid, claiming he came personally because he was so worried after hearing the prince skip dinner. Sane adjusts his round glasses with meticulous precision, giving the prince a penetrating, totally condescending glare while asking if he feels all right. Our guy forces himself to remain completely stoic. He tells himself to stay calm and just act like the original prince for now. He stands up and slaps on a cheerful, harmless smile, claiming he feels much better. Sine looks confused for a second before smoothly claiming that is a relief. Sane instructs the maid, Anna, to serve the meal. Anna flinches violently and squeaks out an obedient reply. Anna sets a plate of pasta on the table, her hands shaking so hard she can barely hold it. The prince thanks her, but wonders internally why she looks like she is about to be executed. He reaches out casually to grab the white teapot, offering to pour his own drink. Anna shrieks in absolute horror and yanks her hands back like she just touched fire. The teapot wobbles wildly across the wooden tray, spilling tea everywhere. The prince sits back as the ceramic container clatters near the edge of the table. Anna turns deathly pale. Her eyes shake wildly as her mouth hangs open in pure, unadulterated terror. She instantly drops to her knees, slamming her forehead into the table while hysterically screaming an apology. The prince holds his hands up in shock, completely baffled by her extreme reaction to a tiny spill. She is basically clinging to the carpet, sobbing uncontrollably. He looks down at her, realizing this level of fear is not normal. A sudden realization hits him. He remembers the character lore from the novel. The original Prince Frieren was absolute human garbage to his servants. A dark flashback shows the original prince ruthlessly executing a pleading servant over a trivial mistake. He was literally written as the worst early story villain in the entire book. Sen makes himself comfortable in an armchair across the table, condescendingly remarking that he is surprised to see the prince looking so well. Holding a rolled document, Sein wears a practiced, completely fake smile. Sein unrolls an official document right in front of the prince's plate, dropping a feather quill beside it. He casually demands the prince sign these important budget papers immediately. The prince picks up the quill, glaring down at the parchment. He knows instantly that a useless royal like him wouldn't have any actual important business to sign off on. He analyzes the foreign royal script. It is an incredibly obvious fraudulent document designed to siphon royal funds directly into Sein's pockets. An ominous silhouette of the Empress looms behind Sein's smirking face. In the novel, Sein gets away with this blatant corruption because he claims to be backed by the all-powerful Empress. The quill taps against the signature line. The original foolish prince signed this without a second thought. Our guy hesitates, wondering if he should just sign it to keep the timeline intact. Sein folds his arms with an arrogant smirk, mocking the prince for actually trying to read it. Our guy bristles, realizing a mere secretary is openly mocking his intelligence to his face. Gripping the quill, he fumes silently. He hates being looked down upon by subordinates, bitterly lamenting that he had to possess such a pathetic character. Sein dramatically places a hand on his chest, patronizingly telling the prince that because he is incompetent, he needs his secretary's guidance. He literally tells him not to think and just sign it. That exact phrase triggers a dark flashback. Sein's face perfectly merges with the scammer from his past life. The memory of being told to just sign without thinking makes his blood boil. He grits his teeth in pure, unbridled fury. He is not going to let himself be manipulated and destroyed again. Heavy shadows cover his eyes as a dark aura explodes around him. The red text makes his resolve crystal clear. He absolutely refuses to live as a helpless victim in this life. Sein looks down in surprise as the prince sharply calls him out. The prince boldly points out that the figures are completely suspicious and a blatant waste of the royal budget. Sein's polite mask slips into a cold, dangerous smirk. A single drop of sweat forms on his cheek as he admits he underestimated the prince. Framed by an intimidating purple aura, Sein smoothly shifts tactics. He pressures the prince to sign it now so his dinner doesn't get cold, promising they can review it later. Before Sein can finish his manipulative sentence, a burst of boiling liquid and shattered ceramic splashes violently directly into his smug face. From the floor, Anna recoils in absolute terror, unable to believe the prince just threw a teapot at his own secretary. The shattered porcelain pieces lie scattered in a growing puddle of dark tea right next to Sein's polished leather shoes. Sein stands there completely drenched, trembling in disbelief as he demands to know what the prince is doing. The prince leans back casually, offering a blatantly fake apology and claiming his hand just slipped. Tea drips from Sein's hair as he shakes with violent rage. He furiously yells at the prince. Meanwhile, our guy casually remembers that Sein's connection to the Empress is completely exaggerated anyway. The prince abruptly slams his hand onto the table, completely cutting off Sein's tantrum. Sein flinches backward in wide-eyed shock. Looking down on his secretary from the shadows, the prince commands him to look up. He sternly informs Sein that since his hand slipped, it is the secretary's job to take full responsibility. Dark crows soar over the fantasy city. The prince reflects on his miserable past life, where he was born with nothing and abused by everyone. He forcefully vows to use his royal power and his meta-knowledge to completely rewrite his fate. Sein grips his hands tightly, veins bulging on his forehead as he tries to suppress his boiling rage. The prince calmly asks why he is just standing there like an idiot. The prince points authoritatively down at the tea-stained carpet, bluntly stating that the floor got dirty. Leaning back in his chair with glowing red eyes piercing the shadows, he issues a cold-blooded command. He orders Sein to get on his knees and clean it up. The sharp porcelain fragments sit on the wet carpet. Our guy has made his choice. He is going to survive this treacherous world by any means necessary. A majestic silhouette of an imperial ruler with glowing golden hair stands before a shimmering magic circle. In this realm, the royal family are basically treated as living gods. A group of blonde aristocrats poses in radiant golden light. Their luminous hair is the ultimate symbol of their supreme status and divine heritage. Sane stands in the dark, his face twisted in deep anger. The narration notes that there is one glaring exception to the royal family's divine image, and that is the trashy seventh prince. Prince Frieren sits at his desk reading a paper, looking completely gloomy with his messy black hair. Sign furiously stews in his own thoughts, disgusted that anyone with pitch black hair could call themselves royalty. Sign grinds his teeth, absolutely enraged that he has to work under such a pathetic loser. He bitterly regrets pouring massive bribes into his career just to end up serving a useless prince. The prince sits quietly in his armchair while Sign literally scrubs the spilled tea off the carpet on his hands and knees. The maid watches anxiously from the corner as Sign mutters curses under his breath. Scrubbing the floorboards with a white cloth, Sign angrily informs His Highness that he has finished cleaning the mess. Gathering the broken porcelain pieces into his cloth, Sign stands up stiffly. He struggles to contain his boiling anger as he announces he will take his leave. Sign freezes in shock as the prince calls out to him. The prince casually criticizes his cleaning skills, remarking that he wasted way too much time on a simple task. The prince glares down with a cold, sinister expression, his red pupils glowing. He issues a harsh, threatening command, ordering Sign to clean faster next time. Sweating nervously, Sign attempts a subtle threat, warning the prince that his strange behavior might force him to report this incident directly to the empress. The prince simply glances away, completely unbothered. He knows Sign is bluffing about his empress connection. He realizes a little spilled tea wasn't enough to permanently put this guy in his place. His dark, calculating eyes narrow as he ponders his next move. He decides he needs to make things unmistakably clear, so Sign stops being a nuisance for good. Turning to Anna, the prince commands her to cover her ears. She startles in surprise and stammers out an obedient response. A terrifying red-tinted panel shows the prince glaring down ruthlessly at the maid. He promises her that if she eavesdrops on a single word, she will be working without her fingers tomorrow. Anna shrieks in absolute terror. Anna tightly clamps both hands over her ears and squeezes her eyes shut, trying desperately to block out every single sound in the room. Leaning forward from the shadows, the prince whispers directly to Sign in hushed, blurred tones. His intense, sinister expression leaves Sign visibly shaken. Sweat pours down Sign's face as his eyes widen in complete horror. Whatever secret the prince just whispered completely shattered his arrogant secretary persona. Sign stands frozen, looking deathly pale. The narration notes he looked exactly like a man staring into the eyes of a terrifying monster. Out in the courtyard, Anna nervously whispers with a group of fellow maids, asking if the seventh prince hasn't been acting incredibly strange lately. Another maid tearfully agrees, terrified that the prince has gotten way scarier. She genuinely wonders if any of the servants will even survive until next year. The maids scrub the stone tiles together, relieved that they haven't run into him. They mention that he has completely isolated himself inside his palace. Anna gasps softly as a colleague reminds her that she is supposed to be on cleaning duty elsewhere today. She quickly scrambles to get back to work. Inside the sunlit palace library, the prince is peacefully enjoying the gorgeous weather surrounded by towering stacks of books. He elegantly sips his tea beside the window. He is quite satisfied that acting like the original villainous prince is keeping everyone too terrified to bother him. He watches Sign scurrying away down a dim hallway. Sign's disrespect has completely vanished, which suits the prince perfectly, since he doesn't want to throw any more teapots. He takes a relaxing sip of tea. He knows he has plenty of time because the original plot doesn't start for another year, and his canon death is 3 years away. He reflects on his past life, remembering how he originally found the worn-out Darkheader novel in a quiet corner of a library. A flashback shows his past student self sitting on the library floor, reading intently. He loved his story more than anything else in his miserable life. Standing in his study, he decides to just elegantly enjoy his free time until the protagonist finally shows up to kick off the main story. Gazing out the high window at the beautiful blue sky, he casually muses that it would be wonderful to have wings and look down at the scenery. Without a single warning, violent crimson and black energy explodes across his body. He clutches his chest, gasping in sudden, overwhelming agony as his eyes glow red. The delicate porcelain tea set drops from his hands and shatters into a million pieces across the floorboards. He collapses to his knees, completely paralyzed by the pain. He cries out internally, feeling like his entire body has been set on fire. Sweat streams down his grimacing face. This burning sensation feels completely different from his transmigration. He is genuinely terrified. Loud knocking echoes against the study door. Anna calls out from the hallway asking if she can come in to clean. An extreme close-up zeroes in on his panic-stricken eye as darkness swallows his face. Overwhelmed by the pain, he desperately prays for someone to save him. Anna cautiously pushes the door open with her broom, sighing in relief when the scary prince appears to be absent. She spots the shattered porcelain scattered across the floorboards and gasps, wondering what exactly happened in the empty study. She kneels down to clean up the mess, sadly noting that selling a fine cup like this could have fed her family for a whole month. A sudden rustling noise from behind the furniture makes her freeze. She turns her head, completely puzzled. A massive black crow with glowing red eyes suddenly bursts from the shadows, swooping directly toward her with a loud caw. She screams in shock. Anna somehow manages to catch the fluttering bird in her arms, sitting on the floor surrounded by scattered black feathers. She gently cradles the crow against her chest, softly warning the bird that a very scary prince lives here and it needs to be careful. The crow looks up with its glowing red eye, letting out a weak caw. Internally, the crow is absolutely losing its mind. The crow realizes it is actually Prince Lan Atharon. He is frantically asking himself how and why he just transformed into a bird. Anna rushes toward the open window with him, anxiously saying they will both be killed if the prince catches them. The crow screams internally, trying to yell that I is the prince. Anna heroically tosses the crow straight out the high castle window to save its life. The crow flaps wildly, screaming in pure terror for her to stop. The small bird plummets rapidly down the massive stone walls of the castle, entirely out of control. The air rushes past his panicked, feathered face as he goes into freefall. He is completely convinced he is about to splatter on the ground and die. Plummeting headfirst toward the distant treetops, he realizes he needs to figure out how to be a bird right now. Instinct takes over. He spreads his dark wings wide against the rushing wind, desperately trying to catch the updraft. His glowing crimson eye burns with pure survival instinct. He commands himself to fly, absolutely refusing to die like this. He successfully catches the air currents and swoops gracefully upward into the vast blue sky, shocked to realize he is actually flying. Gliding on the wind, he marvels at the incredible sensation of soaring through the sky. He glides high above the white stone architecture of the imperial palace, joyfully celebrating his successful flight. But then a very important question crosses his mind. Can he successfully turn back into a human? Night falls over the grand palace domes, bathing the imperial estate in cool evening twilight. Back in his dark bedroom, Lan Atharon is back in his human body, breathlessly examining his hands. He is incredibly relieved that he figured out how to change back. Panting heavily, he rests a hand on his chest. He is amazed that he can trigger the transformation simply by willing it. He spots a normal black crow perched outside in a tree. He wonders if this ability is some kind of curse from the bird that visited him on his first day, noting this power was never mentioned in the novel. He quickly locks his heavy wooden door. Regardless of how he got it, he resolves to keep this strange power an absolute secret from everyone. Looking at his reflection, he realizes that an unscripted ability like this could potentially derail the entire canon progression of the story. A servant knocks on the door, nervously reminding His Highness that the evening succession ritual is about to begin. He glares forward with a resolute expression, muttering that the long-awaited day has finally arrived. Inside the magnificent imperial sanctuary, the emperor sits on his high throne. This sacred ritual is essentially a succession test, but the seventh prince is totally excluded from the competition. Dressed in a dark military uniform, our guy sits completely isolated at the far end of the grand table, noting how lowly his position truly is. Two handsome blonde royal brothers are chatting arrogantly nearby. He notes that their radiant golden hair makes them look like gods, while he just looks like a gloomy crow next to them. A pink-haired royal glares across the table, insultingly asking how a half-witted bastard dares to hold his head up here. Lan Atharon calmly identifies his hostile older brother. The pink-haired prince leans in with a mocking grin, sneering that the trashy prince clearly doesn't respect his elders. He angrily slams his fist on the table when Lan Atharon ignores him. Our guy remains completely unfazed, noting internally that these guys are just minor villains who barely matter to the plot. The elegant first princess firmly grips the pink-haired prince's shoulder, coldly warning him not to make a scene in front of the emperor. He instantly pales and backs down. A strategic diagram shows the heirs seated strictly by their royal rank, with the first prince at the head. The arrogant first prince channels brilliant cyan magic between his hands. The brighter the hair, the stronger their manie's power, which is the unique magic of the nobles. Lan Atharon looks down at his dark uniform. Unlike his siblings, he has pitch-black hair and zero magic. He completely understands why the original seventh prince became so twisted and bitter. The emperor steps forward, his polished boot hitting the stone floor. He holds the absolute peak of magical power in this world. The imposing emperor looks down with absolute authority, his divine aura dominating the entire sanctuary. Flanked by armored guards, the emperor walks down the hall like a living god who holds glory and ruin in his hands. With a deep, booming voice, the emperor commands them to begin the ritual immediately. He approaches an ancient stone tablet hovering over an altar, covered in glowing blue runes used to measure magical power. The emperor places his hand on the smooth stone, and radiant blue magical energy instantly surges outward. A spectacular pillar of brilliant blue light erupts from the altar, shooting straight up into the sanctuary ceiling. The gathered royals watch in awe as glowing blue ripples expand across the entire circular table. Lan Aviran is impressed, wondering if the light originally reached this far in the novel. The emperor lifts his hand, letting ethereal blue flames swirl around the stone. He officially invites his heirs to step forward and test their strength. Lan Aviran watches quietly from his isolated seat, analyzing his powerful family with intense focus. The arrogant first prince confidently raises his hand and volunteers to go first. He approaches the glowing altar. Lan Aviran notes that traditionally, only the first prince participates just to show off his dominance. Lan Aviran watches with a calculating gaze, recalling that Manus rankings established here are basically set in stone for life. The first prince slaps his palm onto the ancient tablet, sending waves of brilliant blue magic flaring outward. Enveloped in blue light, he strikes an arrogant pose to prove to his siblings exactly who the true successor is. Suddenly, the blue light turns chaotic. The first prince violently gasps and coughs up dark blood, his eyes wide in sheer shock as intense pain strikes his body. He drops heavily to his knees, spraying blood onto the floorboards as a sibling screams out in panic. Clutching his throat, the first prince coughs uncontrollably in the shadows while frantic voices beg for help. Lan Aviran stands up in shock as chaos erupts in the hall. Kneeling in a growing pool of his own blood, the first prince clutches his face in despair. Lan Aviran knows this event exactly. The first prince is destined to die from this magical affliction. The red text flashes across the screen. The main story has officially begun. A brilliant blue sphere of magical fire crackles in the void. Manus is a special power that manifests uniquely for each royal. The first prince wields water magic, while the second prince commands golden fire. The first prince's power level today was supposed to be exactly as written in the novel. Lan Aviran watches the chaotic scene unfold. The only problem is, this blood-coughing incident wasn't supposed to happen for another 6 months. His eyes widen in alarm as sweat drips down his face. He rapidly calculates the timeline in his head. The protagonist wasn't even supposed to make an appearance until after this specific event. He suddenly questions his own crow transformation. The original 7th prince was completely incapable of using any Manus at all. He starts panicking, wondering if his unscripted ability showing up right when the timeline broke is just a massive coincidence, or something worse. A flashback shows the 2nd prince casually smashing stone with raw brute force. That guy is an absolute monster when it comes to physical power. The 2nd prince, Rasha, sneers at Lan Aviran, calling him a magicless cripple and asking who he thinks he is intruding in his private quarters. Lan Aviran stares him down calmly, bluntly stating that if he were a real assassin, Rasha would already be dead since he sneaked past all the guards so easily. Rasya furiously kicks a piece of furniture across the room, screaming curses at being caught off guard in his own bedroom. Leaning against his table while sweating profusely, Rasha tries to process what is happening to his body, noting he felt perfectly fine this morning. He tries to channel his blue magical energy, but the sparks just sputter and fail. He stammers in panic as his magic refuses to answer him. Rasha collapses to one knee, clutching his chest as painful coughing fits rack his entire body. With wide, terrified yellow eyes, he feels like his insides are burning up. He is absolutely horrified by the thought that he might never use magic again. Staggering backward, he desperately screams that this is impossible because he is the next emperor. Trembling, he grips the hilt of his decorative sword and yells that he is fundamentally different from common bugs. Trying to soothe his nerves, he sits on his plush couch and smokes from a gilded pipe, desperately trying to convince himself he just needs some rest. Lan Aviran silently materializes in the shadows right behind the couch. Rasha whips around with his sword drawn, shouting in alarm. Lan Aviran stands casually with his hands in his pockets, completely unbothered by the drawn blade despite knowing Rasha's monstrous physical strength. Rasha puts on a smug smirk, mocking Lan Aviran as a useless cripple and asking why he showed up uninvited. Lan Aviran points out again how easily he slipped into the heavily guarded room, making Raja look incredibly foolish. Rasha demands to know what trick he used. Lan Aviran casually replies that he simply climbed up the outer wall from the outside. Rasya yells out that he expects him to believe such obvious nonsense. Lan Aviran dismisses him, stating it doesn't matter if he believes it or not. Lan Aviran asks how his body is feeling, correctly guessing that Rasha's royal physician couldn't find a single thing wrong with him despite the agonizing pain. Rasa scoffs with a defensive smirk, trying desperately to mask his growing anxiety. He throws his head back and bursts into loud, hysterical laughter, trying to mock Lanaviren's serious tone with forced theatrical madness. Lanaviren watches the performance with total indifference, calmly remarking that Rasha is actually using his brain a little more than expected. Rasha's face turns sinister. He accuses his little brother of poisoning him just to secure a bargaining chip for when Rasha takes the throne. He aggressively lunges forward, reaching out to grab Lanaviren by the throat, shouting that his plot is a massive failure. Lanaviren doesn't even flinch. He coldly states that in exactly 1 week, Rasha will be begging for death as blood spews from his eyes and ears. Rasha freezes mid-strike, his hand trembling as absolute shock washes over his face. Lanaviren comfortably takes a seat on the sofa, gesturing with open hands to prove he hasn't used any tricks. He explains that Rasha's body is going to rapidly deteriorate until he dies. He honestly admits that even he doesn't know who placed this curse on him yet. With sharp, commanding eyes, Lanaviren orders Rasha to listen very carefully if he actually wants to survive. Sweating in pure terror, Rasha listens as Lanaviren warns him that following his instructions is his one and only chance to live. A black crow soars away into the rainy night. Lanaviren is incredibly relieved that Rasha turned out to be just as simple-minded and cowardly as he was written in the novel. Gliding through the rain, he notes that Rasha didn't even send guards to tail him, meaning he can manipulate the second prince freely for now. He flies over the moonlit palace, marveling at how insanely convenient this crow transformation is for sneaking around. With a gleam in his red eye, he realizes that since he's already outside, he might as well take care of some other business. He flaps his wings and ascends rapidly into the stormy sky. Cut to a sunny day at the palace. Anna is standing outside his door, nervously wondering what to do. She holds a covered meal tray, terrified because the prince hasn't eaten in 2 days and hasn't made a single sound inside his room. Her imagination runs wild, picturing herself being executed for murdering a royal through sheer negligence. She screams in terror at the thought. Panicking, she forcefully bangs on the heavy wooden door, desperately asking if His Highness is alive in there. She bursts into the room, instantly tripping over her own feet. Lanaviren turns around, looking mildly annoyed by the noisy intrusion. Anna crashes face first onto the carpet, sending the food tray and hot soup flying everywhere. She lies completely frozen next to a puddle of spilled soup, absolutely terrified of what the scary prince is going to do to her. Lanaviren just looks down at her with a calm, expressionless face, showing zero signs of flying into a murderous rage. She frantically scrambles up and bows her head to the floor, hysterically screaming that she committed a crime worthy of death and begging for mercy. Tears stream down her face as she stammers excuses. Lanaviren just thinks to himself that this maid is way too dramatic. He gives her a stern glare, asking how she plans to take responsibility for ruining his shoes with soup. She weeps harder, insisting she deserves to die. He sighs, tells her to forget it, and commands her to clean it up spotlessly in 5 minutes and get lost. Anna blinks in disbelief, nervously confirming she survived. He walks away, laying down a strict rule that she is forbidden from approaching his quarters unless called. He is honestly just tired of her dramatic death offers. The scene transitions to the open blue sky as a few days pass. It's been a full month since the first prince suffered his public nosebleed at the succession ritual. A dark rumor has quietly spread through the palace. Everyone is whispering that the intended heir has completely lost his magical abilities. To the other royal siblings, this rumor is the golden opportunity they've been waiting for to seize the throne. To crush the rumors, the first prince convinced the emperor to move up the royal hunting competition by 6 whole months. Riding a majestic black horse, Lanaviren wonders if these timeline shifts are only happening in the capital, or if the protagonist's story is changing too. Today is the hunting competition. He hopes to bump into the protagonist so he can hand over a key item. The orange-haired third prince rides up with an arrogant grin, loudly insulting Lanaviren and calling him a bug. The third prince mocks Lanaviren's black horse. Because this event is happening a year early, the third prince is even more hot-headed than his novel counterpart. Lanaviren calmly ignores him completely, deciding to just focus on his own objectives. The third prince fumes in rage, yelling at him for daring to turn his back. The black horse snorts loudly at the third prince. Lanaviren smiles smoothly, noting that the seventh prince seems naturally gifted with animals. He halts his horse at the edge of a scenic clearing, quietly announcing their arrival. A towering stone spire mountain rises above the dense green forest. This is the grand entrance to the imperial hunting grounds. The giant rock monolith is known as the Tower of the Beginning, where the opening ritual happens every year. Lanaviren explains that the hunting competition will begin the exact second the first prince completes the opening ritual. The emperor looks over the assembled royals. This hunt isn't really a sport, it's a cutthroat political show to prove dominance. The emperor commands the first prince to prepare for the ritual. The first prince respectfully bows to accept his duty. Rasha walks up with a smug smile, sarcastically asking his brother what wish he plans to ask the emperor for when he wins. Rasya sneers that the first prince's victory is guaranteed anyway. The first prince arrogantly agrees that his win is entirely obvious. The nobles gather around the grand stone staircase to watch the next emperor show off his magical power. The crowd whispers excitedly, though some quietly gossip about the unfortunate incident from a month ago before being hushed. The first prince steps up to the altar, gritting his teeth in hidden anxiety. He secretly curses himself for actually listening to Lanaviren's advice. Lanaviren glares sharply from the crowd. He is really hoping the first prince didn't mess up his very specific instructions. Surrounded by chaotic blue magic, the first prince furiously vows that if Lanaviren tricked him, he will murder him in the most agonizing way possible. Lanaviren wears a relaxed, confident smile, quietly telling Raja not to look so nervous while their brother stiffly prepares his magic. The first prince's eyes go wide and crazed as magical energy erupts around his face. As long as he follows the instructions, Lanaviren knows something truly spectacular is about to happen. The sky darkens with moody blue storm clouds, setting a tense atmosphere for the ritual. Brilliant blue streams of water, mana, swirl wildly around the first prince, illuminating his white uniform in cyan light. A massive vortex of magical energy expands outward, creating a blinding storm that sweeps right over the audience. Powerful wind and water currents rush past the forest trees with incredible speed. The air crackles violently with unstable, explosive, magical energy. The nobles cower and shield their faces, screaming warnings to avoid getting swept into the magical tempest. Lanaviren stands completely calm amidst the rushing winds, silently observing the spectacle without a hint of fear. The first prince grits his teeth in desperate fury, screaming out his imperial title as his eyes glow intensely. He flashes a maniacal grin and growls out Rasha's full name with pure malice. He thrusts both hands upward, launching a tremendous blast of blue magic into the sky and passionately screaming that he alone is destined to be emperor. A colossal column of blue magic shoots straight up, taking the faint shape of a roaring dragon that lights up the entire heavens. The dramatic display reaches its absolute peak above the towering stone monolith. The intense light slowly fades into a gentle rain of sparkling blue particles. The entire crowd stands in absolute stunned silence. Duke Agony Fetus, the battle-hardened war hero, gazes forward solemnly, marveling at the true divine power of the imperial family. The first prince stands proudly on the altar as the nobles finally erupt into thunderous cheers and praises. A flashback shows Lanaviren handing a strange gray stone to his brother. The first prince was incredibly insulted, asking if he was being mocked with a simple rock. Lanaviren calmly explained that the stone possesses the unique ability to absorb the polluted manis currently destroying his body. He delivered a cold-blooded warning. If his brother refused the treatment, he could simply choose to die as destined. The first prince gritted his teeth in frustration as Lanaviren bluntly stated he has no intention of saving someone against their own will. Back in the present, Lanaviren rides his horse, noting that using this late-game magic stone a bit early shouldn't cause any major plot holes. Secretary Sign kneels awkwardly on the grass, trembling under the weight of a massive, heavy backpack while greeting the prince. Sign bows in exhaustion, confirming he brought the bag exactly as instructed. Lanaviren glares down menacingly, harshly criticizing Sign for struggling with a simple bag and demanding to know if it was tampered with. Sign sweats in absolute panic, secretly remembering that he intentionally assigned this dangerous, wild black horse to the prince, hoping it would injure him. A ceremonial hornist blows a deep, resounding blast to signal the start. The emperor raises his glowing hand, formally declaring the royal hunting competition officially open. The royal horsemen immediately spur their steeds into a gallop, charging into the forest. Nobles charge forward on foot and horseback, cheering loudly about winning the emperor's wish, even though they all know a royal will inevitably win. Lanaviren rides at a calm pace, letting the overeager competitors rush ahead. He just wants to keep a low profile since winning is irrelevant to his actual goal. He spots Duke Agony Fetus. His true objective today is to track down this legendary warrior. The Duke's short, round-faced assistant, Tolan, carries a massive travel pack and excitedly gushes about the first prince's divine magical display. Duke Fetus walks calmly through the woods, cynically remarking that the dramatic ritual was just the emperor's way of crushing the nobility's pride. Tolan panics, begging the Duke not to utter such dangerous, blasphemous thoughts out loud. The Duke chuckles, reassuring him they are completely alone. The Duke's smile fades into a serious gaze. He mutters quietly that there is a very good reason he has managed to survive to his old age. Frieren rides steadily along the forest trail. The vast hunting grounds are divided into 3 distinct zones based on animal danger levels. He checks his parchment map, noting the safe small animal zone near the entrance and the highly dangerous large animal zone deeper inside. He remembers a brief flashback from the novel where Duke Fetus presented a rare golden fox to the Emperor. Since it was only a brief mention, he never knew exactly where the fox was caught. That is exactly why he spent so much time scouting the forest from the sky as a crow. Because golden foxes are incredibly rare, he had to carefully narrow down all potential nesting locations. He pieces the clues together. Since the novel mentioned the Duke washing his hands right after the hunt, the fox must be near the southwest lakeside. His black horse snorts in agreement. Frieren smiles, amused that the animal seems to actually understand every word he says. Holding the heavy leather backpack securely over his shoulder, he is just relieved. Sane managed to deliver it on time. Suddenly, the black horse pulls up sharply, its hooves grinding into the dirt and throwing Frieren forward. The wild horse bucks violently, thrashing its head and refusing to move another inch. Frieren quickly dismounts, demanding to know what is causing the sudden tantrum. The horse vigorously shakes its head, completely refusing to move forward. He wonders if it's sick or injured. He looks around, wondering if the horse sensed a dangerous predatory beast lurking nearby. He looks down at his massive backpack, seriously wondering if the load is just too heavy for the horse to carry. The horse lets out a loud, mocking snort right in his face. Frieren loses it, angrily shouting that other horses pull entire wagons while this one complains about a single bag. He angrily threatens to order the stable master to starve the arrogant beast if it doesn't cooperate. Completely unfazed, the horse rears up, kicks its legs, and immediately gallops away into the woods at top speed, leaving him shouting in the dust. He watches his ride disappear into the sunny distance, standing completely abandoned in the shadows. He lowers his head in total defeat, succinctly concluding that he is completely screwed. He trudges through the forest, realizing that under normal circumstances, hunting a few deer would have been a breeze if he wasn't stranded. Duke Fetus looks down reflectively, sadly noting that despite being the Empire's sword and shield, he can't fight the relentless march of time. Tolan gives him a warm smile, begging him not to speak so despondently, and reminding him that he is already a living legend. A glorious flashback shows the Duke in his prime, raising a blood-stained broadsword victorious over fallen foes. In the present, he humbly dismisses it, calling himself just a retired old man. The Duke asks Tolan if he has ever seen the royal family up close. Tolan admits he has only observed them from a safe distance. The Duke looks forward seriously, telling his aide that once he faces the royals directly, he will finally understand who the true gods of this empire are. A flashback shows a bustling imperial street. The Duke narrates that his family has proudly protected the crown for over 1,000 years. Young Duke Fetus sits in a carriage listening to his father explain their proud family duty to supply the imperial household. His father gestures proudly out the window at their merchant wagons bearing the family crest. The carriage violently jolts over the cobblestones, interrupting his speech mid-sentence. The panicked driver desperately pulls the reins, apologizing and explaining that something got caught in the carriage wheel. The father steps out to inspect the disturbance, while the driver nervously begs him to stay inside. A horrifying monochrome visual reveals the emaciated, lifeless body of a starving child crushed beneath the heavy carriage wheel. Dark blood drips from the wooden spokes onto the stone paving slabs. The father gazes down at the dead child with a deeply sorrowful expression, quietly noting, the victim appears to be a local vagrant. He deduces with a heavy heart that the starving child was likely caught trying to steal imperial tribute food from the nearby temple. He bitterly remarks that such tragic, senseless deaths are a common sight in this area. Young Fetus peeks out the door, curiously asking what happened. His father sharply cuts him off, commanding him not to step out. The father fiercely yells at his son to stay inside, making the boy flinch in sudden fear. Blocking the doorway, the father softly warns his son that he must not come out to witness this terrible reality. His face is shrouded in deep grief as he struggles to find words to explain the world's cruelty to his innocent boy. Back in the present, Duke Fetus gazes up at the sky, sorrowfully reflecting that the dead child wasn't even 10 years old. He knows the poor child's body was likely just tossed into an incinerator, noting the boy was even younger than his own son. He deeply questions the moral foundation of the supposedly noble empire, wondering if dark cruelty is just an accepted part of their world. Tolan huffs and puffs behind his master, carrying the massive backpack and urging the Duke to hurry so they can save face for the family. The Duke smiles gently and apologizes for the delay, sharing that he actually knows a secret spot nearby where a rare golden fox appears. Meanwhile, Lan Aviran is trudging through the forest, staggering under the crushing weight of his massive backpack. He vows to turn his runaway horse into a roast when he gets back. He can't transform into a crow while carrying this heavy bag, and he desperately doesn't want to lose track of the Duke. He crawls low through the bushes, knowing wild beasts could attack at any second, even in the safe zone. A sudden rustling noise erupts right in front of him. He freezes, internally groaning that a predator finally found him. He regrets not bringing a simple weapon, cursing himself for thinking it would be too annoying to carry. Parting the bushes, he spots a green-haired boy collapsed on the ground, murmuring weakly about seeing a black horse. A stray rock suddenly flies through the air and smacks the boy squarely in the face with a loud thud, knocking him out cold. Lan Aviran stares down at the unconscious boy in complete bewilderment, anxiously trying to guess his identity. An anxious voice echoes from deeper in the woods, asking if everyone is all right after hearing the noise. Lan Aviran stares at the boy's green hair, his suspicion basically confirmed. He recognizes the bruised face instantly. It is Duke Fetus's personal aide, Tolan Krysa. Holding the heavy rock he just accidentally threw, Lan Aviran absolutely panics. This was the worst possible person to hit. Duke Agony Fetus charges into the clearing with his massive broadsword drawn, looking like an absolute war hero. The narration introduces him as the former Imperial Knight Commander, destined to become the mentor of the novel's true protagonist. The text declares that this legendary figure will one day turn the entire empire upside down. Lan Aviran clutches the heavy stone, completely panicking as the Duke approaches. He absolutely cannot afford to get caught by the war hero right now. A text box bluntly states that this chaotic mess was definitely not part of his original plan. He originally planned to hunt the golden fox first, then falsely accused the Duke of trying to steal a royal's kill. His master plan was to force the Duke to carry his heavy bag of stones as a humiliating punishment. It was supposed to be simple. A giant text box screaming "but" interrupts his thoughts, highlighting how badly things have derailed. He holds his head in sheer frustration, desperately asking himself how to fix this nightmare. The Duke inspects the heavy stone, immediately realizing it was thrown intentionally by someone hiding nearby. He scans the trees with a sharp, calculating gaze, wondering if the attacker was actually an assassin aiming for him. Tolan starts to wake up, groaning and clutching his bruised head. The Duke immediately calls out to him. The Duke urgently asks if he remembers any details about the person who just attacked him. Hiding behind a tree, Lan Aviran sweats nervously. If rumors spread that the despised 7th Prince assaulted the Duke's aide, he is completely ruined. Tolan struggles to sit up, his face strained as he tries to remember what hit him. Lan Aviran's eyes widen in sheer panic. He is internally screaming, terrified of being exposed. Tolan slowly opens his mouth to answer the Duke's question. Tolan apologizes, saying everything happened too fast for him to see the attacker. Lan Aviran exhales a massive sigh of relief, thanking goodness the kid is blind. The Duke draws his broadsword with a fluid motion, telling Tolan to stay put while he handles this. Lan Aviran takes his chance, sprinting away through the dense forest with his heavy backpack. This is his one and only chance to escape. He stomps through the brush at top speed, determined to put as much distance between them as possible. The Duke charges furiously through the trees, vowing to hunt down the attacker personally and drag them back for justice. He cuts through the forest canopy with terrifying, predatory speed. Panting heavily, Lan Aviran struggles to keep running. The heavy bag is completely draining his physical stamina. Glancing over his shoulder, he tries to reassure himself that losing a retired old man shouldn't be that hard. To his horror, the Duke leaps through the foliage like a wild beast, closing the distance instantly. Lan Aviran screams internally, wondering how an old man moves this fast. The Duke yells out, asking if he is a cultist or a rebel. Lan Aviran realizes he is literally seconds away from getting caught. He frantically considers ditching the bag so he can turn into a crow, bitterly wishing his runaway horse was here. He hesitates, his boots pounding the ground as he searches for any other way out. He pushes himself to the absolute limit, desperately wishing he could run faster. The forest blurs into a streak of green as the chase hits maximum velocity. The Duke lunges forward, swinging his massive blade, but slices through empty air. He pauses in surprise as his target simply vanishes. Standing alone in the clearing, the Duke scans the area in confusion, wondering how the figure accelerated so fast and seemingly changed shape. Frustrated, he sheathes his sword, muttering that his aging eyes must be failing him. He stands in the vast meadow, completely utterly baffled that he actually lost the suspect. Meanwhile, Lan Aviran is sprinting effortlessly, suddenly realizing his body feels completely weightless even though he's still running on land. Galloping hooves echo beside him. He realizes his wild black horse actually came back. His dark eye reflects the galloping horse as a sudden, insane realization hits him. The black horse rears up in a sunlit clearing. Lon Averon is absolutely mind-blown by how crazy the situation turned out. A black riding boot steps firmly onto the soft grass as a rider dismounts. The first prince smiles proudly, asking his brother if he really managed to slay such a gigantic beast. A colossal bear-like monster lies dead in the glade. The two princes stand casually before the massive carcass. The first prince asks Rasha if he has decided what wish he's going to request from the emperor when he inevitably wins. Rasha's face falls into a dark, cruel smirk. He mutters that he definitely has a specific wish in mind. Lanaviran slumps exhausted against an ancient tree deep in the forest, letting out a long, heavy sigh. He covers his face in complete despair, bluntly concluding that he is screwed. He stares at his empty hands in horror, realizing he totally dropped the crucial heavy backpack while running from the Duke. He dramatically rolls around on the grass in agony, screaming that there should be a limit to how badly things can go wrong. Lying flat on his back, he stares blankly at the sky, taking a second to compose himself. He sits up sharply, deciding to stop whining. He resolves to retrace his steps and find the dropped bag before it's too late. Back at the crash site, Talon greets his master as the Duke returns empty-handed. The Duke kneels with genuine concern, asking if Tolan's head is feeling any better. Tolan admits he is still dizzy but okay. The Duke looks deeply disappointed, ashamed to admit the attacker was insanely fast and managed to escape. He points to the heavy leather backpack sitting on the grass. Talon explains he picked it up while walking back. They examine the strange luxury bag, completely baffled as to why it is filled entirely with heavy stones. Lon Averan steps out of the shadows with a cold glare, sarcastically suggesting someone played a prank on them. He stands tall and imposing. Tolan recognizes the bag and instantly stammers out the 7th prince's title in shock. Lon Averan points an authoritative finger at them as they flinch in surprise. The Duke and Tolan immediately drop to one knee, bowing deeply to show utmost formal respect. The Duke respectfully asks if the bag belongs to His Highness. Lon Averon casually replies that he was wondering where he dropped it. Heavy shadows cover Lon Averon's face as he fixes the Duke with an accusatory glare, sternly demanding to know if they stole his property. The Duke firmly denies the theft, calmly explaining they just stumbled across the dropped bag by chance. Lon Averon looks down haughtily, dismissing the excuse and coldly noting that no one wants their wrist chopped off for stealing royal property. He shifts his gaze to Talon, asking why his head is bleeding. Talon nervously stammers that he had a sudden accident. Tolan trembles in pure terror, too scared to provoke the prince by talking too much. A rapid flashback shows Lon Averon hurling the heavy rock through the bushes. Tolan looks up with quivering eyes, starting to piece the memory together. Before Tolan can finish his sentence, Lon Averon aggressively lunges forward and grabs him by his green hair. He forcefully yanks Tolan's head back, glaring down with a merciless expression. He harshly scolds the boy for daring to interrupt a royal conversation. Holding the terrified boy, he turns his cold gaze to the Duke, cruelly asking to borrow his sword so he can fix the boy's head himself. Tolan whimpers helplessly, begging for mercy as absolute terror consumes his dilated eye. The Duke bows even deeper, pleading for mercy and promising to discipline his aide himself. Lan Averon offers insincere praise for his loyalty. The vision of the dead child under the carriage wheel flashes in his mind. Lon Averon bitterly thinks to himself that the Duke really is just an imperial dog who won't even blink to save his own aide. He reflects that the Duke's young son will just grow up to be another loyal dog for the Empire, repeating the cycle. He releases Tolan and forcefully shoves the heavy backpack onto the Duke's shoulders, claiming their meeting is fate and entrusting the bag to him. Framed by a sinister red aura, he strictly commands the Duke not to let the bag leave his body even if it kills him. The Duke stands solemnly under the crushing weight. Lon Averon demands to know if his royal command is understood. With absolute obedience, the Duke solemnly vows to humbly obey the prince's glorious command. Lon Averon turns and walks away, casually waving over his shoulder and telling them to have fun hunting. He admits to himself that his villain act was total trash, but planting the seed of hatred was absolutely necessary for his plan. Tolan kneels weeping, apologizing for causing trouble. The Duke tells him he is lucky to still have all his limbs after crossing the 7th prince. Tolan looks up with a tear-stained face, softly revealing he just remembered exactly who threw the rock. He explicitly confirms that the person who attacked him was indeed the 7th prince. The Duke's face twitches with intense, boiling rage. His eyes glow through the shadows as he forcefully orders Tolan to stop talking. He shuts his aide down completely, shouting that he doesn't need to hear another word. Lon Averon walks alone, reflecting on the novel's plot. The Duke was originally supposed to rebel next year after his son's tragic death. To trigger the rebellion a year early, he needed to provide the Duke with an incredibly powerful emotional stimulus right now. A memory flashes of the arrogant second prince declaring his wish to redevelop the temple area. Raja sinisterly vows to clear out all the poor vagrants living there like parasites. The Duke stands in the forest, his face completely dark with boiling, suppressed rage. Gazing toward the golden sunset over the distant palace, the narration concludes that Duke Fetus will inevitably rebel against the crown because it is his absolute destiny. A serene sunset paints the forest canopy golden as crows fly through the evening sky. Warm light filters through the dense foliage onto the quiet forest path. Lan Averin carefully peeks out from the bushes, making absolutely sure the coast is clear after scouting the area 10 times in crow form. Standing in the royal camp, he chuckles internally about acting like a senseless villain, reminding himself that he is literally playing the role of a villain. The elegant first princess, Mentil Abiran, approaches him in a white gown, pleasantly asking if he is walking alone. She offers an ethereal smile, remarking that seeing him on foot is quite unusual. He panics internally, shocked to bump into the incredibly dangerous first princess out here of all places. He bows respectfully, but she gently tells him to skip the formalities since they are family. She curiously asks where he left his horse. He awkwardly lies, claiming he just wanted to take a walk and left the beast behind. Her warm smile instantly vanishes, replaced by a cold, sharp glare. She states bluntly that she doesn't understand. A terrifying red shadow covers her face as she asks why he would lie to his own flesh and blood. He flinches back, sweating as he forces himself to stay calm and asks what she means. She reveals that she found his masterless black horse running wild in the forest earlier. She cold-bloodedly drops the bomb that she personally ordered his horse to be executed on the spot. She firmly declares that any livestock failing to obey royalty deserves nothing less than death. He immediately drops to one knee, apologizing profusely and claiming he lied because he was embarrassed about losing his mount. Her tone instantly softens as she tells him to stand up, playfully remarking that he makes it look like she is punishing him. She warmly offers to get him a new horse anytime he needs one, completely shifting back to her friendly persona. He watches her walk away with a calculating gaze. He realizes she is an extremely dangerous opponent, because her true intentions are entirely impossible to read. He wonders internally why she chose to just let him off the hook and leave so quietly. Night falls over the encampment, bathing the white tents in cool blue moonlight. Inside a candlelit tent, a royal physician blatantly doubts Tolan's absurd story about tripping over rocks while chasing a beast. Tolan sits sheepishly with his head bandaged. The physician chuckles, saying he's never seen someone get this battered by a simple rock. The Duke asks how long the recovery will take. The physician warns that this is a serious head trauma requiring substantial rest. Tolan abruptly stands up, insisting on staying by his master's side, but the Duke reassures him his loyalty is noted. The Duke firmly orders his aide to rest while he and Jack handle the rest of the hunting competition. Tolan's protests instantly vanish into a bright, sparkling smile as he joyfully promises to rest as commanded. The Duke laughs, noting that a royal aide taking a vacation during a hunt is a historic first. Tolan playfully grumbles about never getting a day off. The Duke promises to win the hunt just so he can use his royal wish to grant Tolan his dream of developing a rich gold mine. A solitary candle flickers warmly on the wooden desk as the night deepens. Tolan is snoring peacefully in bed, totally relaxed and enjoying his time off. A mysterious hand carefully sets an official sealed parchment scroll on the nightstand right next to him. Lan Averin stands in the shadows with a calculating smirk, calling the Duke an exemplary imperial dog who puts loyalty above his own aide's safety. The Duke sits alone in his room, clutching his face in deep distress as Lan Averin's cruel words echo in his mind. Unable to sleep, he decides to step outside into the cool blue moonlight for some fresh air. His eyes go wide with absolute shock at what he sees outside. The heavy leather backpack packed with stones is sitting completely unattended on the grass. The stones rattle inside the bag with a distinct metallic clinking sound. Carrying the heavy bag over his shoulder, the Duke walks through the moonlit forest, whispering to his unseen son that they are visiting the temple today. He speaks with solemn reverence, narrating the ancient legend of a heavenly savior descending to a chaotic world. A monochrome flashback shows young Fetus asking his father about the legend of Sierra the Great. A colossal stone statue of Sierra the Great holds a massive sword. The founder used mysterious divine powers to subjugate the endless wars. The majestic statue marks the founding of the Aberan Empire over 1,000 years ago. The Duke looks down sorrowfully, softly addressing his precious son while carrying the physical burden of his duty. He pleads for his son to follow in his footsteps and become a proud sword for the imperial family. Feeling the crushing weight of the backpack, he asks himself why he is hauling around a bag of completely useless stones. His intense, brooding expression shows his deep internal conflict as he wonders if his actions stem from blind loyalty or something much deeper. A sudden horn blast echoes through the forest, startling him as he recognizes the ceremonial signal. At the dawn hunting camp, nobles whisper in utter shock about the absolute carnage that happened overnight. A massive mountain of slain magical beasts sits frozen solid by blue water magic. The first prince wiped out the entire zone in a single night. The announcer stammers over the loudspeakers, completely baffled that the 4-day hunt ended so abruptly. The first prince stands triumphantly atop the pile of defeated monsters. He is formally declared the absolute winner with an unprecedented record. He smiles proudly, soaking in the arrogant glory of his flawless victory. He bows respectfully before the emperor, who formally congratulates him on the swift win. The emperor instructs him to state his desired wish according to ancient tradition. The nobles watch eagerly, trying to guess what kind of political power he will request. The first prince claims that the holy grounds around Sierra the Great's temple are being infested by poor vagrants. His face contorts into a cruel smile as he declares that decisive action must be taken to cleanse the area. Standing in the audience, the Duke turns pale with horror as he realizes the sheer cruelty of the proposal. A terrifying vision shows armored knights torching the slums and executing helpless peasants as the first prince officially requests authority to wipe them all out. The Duke's eye dilates as the tragic memory of the dead child under the carriage wheel flashes through his mind. He remembers his innocent younger self calling out to his father in confusion. He grips the hilt of his broadsword, his hand trembling as the insult of being a loyal dog clashes with his conscience. Breaking all protocol, the Duke draws his massive broadsword with a sharp metallic ring and steps right out of the crowd. He strides forward toward the royal dais with an unyielding expression, silently apologizing to his son for what he is about to do. The crowd erupts into anxious confusion as the resolute war hero approaches the emperor uninvited. Tolan wakes up in bed to find Lana Viren peering down at him upside down. He gasps in terror and tries to formally greet the prince. Lana Viren gently pushes him back down, warning him to move slowly so the blood doesn't rush to his head. He casually offers medical advice. Tolan is totally bewildered, asking why the 7th prince is at his bedside. Lana Viren stares at him seriously, asking if he truly has no idea about the dangerous situation his master is currently in. Tolan's eyes go wide as Lana Viren drops the bomb that the closing ceremony has already started. Tolan leaps out of bed and sprints out of the tent at full speed. Lana Viren calls after him, telling him he better hurry. Tolan frantically shoves his way through the dense crowd of nobles, desperately shouting apologies as he goes. Drenched in sweat, he forces his way to the very front line of the spectators. He freezes in absolute shock as he witnesses his master kneeling alone on the stone dais before the furious royals. The first prince glares down in pure outrage, demanding to know what the Duke thinks he's doing. The Duke proudly declares his family's 1,000-year history of protecting the crown. With a fierce glare, he boldly asserts that his family is far more suited to handle the temple vagrants, officially challenging the first prince's request. The emperor stares down with an unreadable, stony expression as the Duke finishes his treasonous declaration. The first prince is stunned when the emperor actually agrees to grant the Duke's request instead. The emperor offers a cold, mocking smirk, finding it hilarious that the Duke's blind loyalty just forced him to openly defy royalty. Enraged by the public humiliation, the first prince channels violent blue magic, screaming that he won't show any mercy. He extends his glowing hand, officially declaring that the Duke's treason warrants immediate execution. The Duke calmly bows his head, accepting his death without a single tremor of fear. Tolan screams in sheer horror as he watches his beloved master prepare to be executed. Lana Viren watches quietly with a calculating glare. He thinks to himself that the plot is finally moving, wishing the protagonist was here to see it. Far away by a forest river, a mysterious hooded figure is filling his canteen. Sparkling blue magical particles suddenly shimmer across the surface of the stream. He pauses, completely confused as the glowing magic swirls around his hands. He looks up and sees the massive pillar of royal magic lighting up the distant sky. The hood is pulled back to reveal sharp golden eyes. The text officially introduces him as Ratel, the true protagonist of the novel. A heroic portrait of Duke Fetus flashes on screen, highlighting his 30 years of legendary military exploits as the Imperial Knight Commander. Now, he kneels helplessly on the dais as magical water currents bind his body, labeled a traitor for insulting the imperial family. The first prince extends his hand, cold and terrifying, formally declaring the summary execution. A massive torrent of blue water magic blasts from his palm directly into the kneeling Duke with an explosive flash. The nobles cower from the sheer force of the magical blast ripping across the sanctuary. Trapped inside a swirling sphere of compressed water, the Duke suffocates, but notices a bizarre reflection in the current. Through the distorted water, he sees Tolan, Frieren, and the guards standing nearby. He panics, wondering why his aide is in the crossfire. Seeing Tolan looking healthy gives the Duke a brief surge of relief despite his own impending death. He silently begs Tolan to take care of his young son, before noticing something incredibly startling about the seventh prince. He catches Friren's sharp, calculating gaze, realizing the prince is secretly orchestrating this entire spectacle. Suffocating in the water, he struggles to read Friren's moving lips through the swirling current. His bloodshot eyes widen in desperation. He completely refuses to give up, screaming internally that he cannot die here. The first prince cranks up the power, intending to crush the Duke entirely. A colossal column of blue water magic blasts skyward with overwhelming destructive force. The execution reaches its chaotic, explosive climax, lighting up the entire sky. The swirling torrent washes over the stone floor, leaving absolutely nothing behind. The first prince lowers his arm, pointing triumphantly at the empty stone ground. Imperial guards forcefully restrain Tolan as he weeps hysterically, reaching out for his vanished master. Frieren stands calmly in the crowd, watching the outcome with a completely satisfied expression. A flashback shows young Rattel diligently writing in a notebook. He gazes out the library window, lost in thought. A streak of luminous blue magic arcs across the sky, shooting away from the sanctuary. Rattel lands smoothly in the forest, kicking up dirt as he tracks the anomaly. The cracked earth shows exactly where a stray surge of magic slammed down. He sprints through the underbrush with incredible speed, his cloak billowing as he chases the light. He vaults off a rock into a clearing bathed in brilliant blue magic. Crouching low, he peers into the dense blue tempest, unable to see what's hidden inside. He focuses hard on the churning currents of compressed magic. A brilliant beam of gold and blue light erupts from the ground straight into the sky. Rattel leaps backward to avoid the sudden magical detonation. The magical silhouette finally dissipates into glittering particles. He lands securely on his boots, bracing against the wind. Standing on a high cliff, he scans the vast forest below. Sweating under his hood, he realizes he completely lost track of the magical entity. He watches a faint streak of blue light disappear over the horizon, knowing it got away. His golden eyes burn with intense curiosity as he glares after the escaping light. Back at the sanctuary, Tolan stands alone on the empty ground, head bowed in grief. The nobles whisper mockingly about the fallen hero, already declaring the fetus family completely ruined. The emperor solemnly announces the execution is over, ordering the closing ceremony to begin at noon. The announcer instructs everyone to prepare for the final event under the clear, sunny sky. The first prince cracks his knuckles with a smug smirk, thrilled that he easily crushed a pest. He strides past the bowing nobles, arrogantly declaring that showing mercy only makes inferiors forget their place. Tolan walks past as a noble calls his late master an idiot. Tolan just keeps walking, his boots stepping steadily as he leaves the mocking crowd. He walks alone down a quiet forest trail, his head lowered in silent mourning. He pushes through the bustling camp, ignoring the stares of the soldiers. A hostile noble literally spits at his feet, calling him a traitor. Tolan doesn't even blink. Frieren watches him leave, knowing Tolan's heart must be completely shattered right now. Tolan enters a deserted tent. Frieren asserts in thought that despite the grief, Tolan will absolutely not break. The tent is totally trashed from the guards searching it earlier. Tolan freezes when he spots a sealed parchment scroll lying on the floorboards. With trembling hands, he recognizes the wax seal of the fetus family. The letter reveals the Duke's final words, stating that if Tolan is reading this, he is already dead. The Duke's emotional final request begs Tolan to take care of his young son, Flynn. A memory shows the Duke holding the scroll, asking Tolan to grant an old man's final wish. The Duke knew he was about to make a fatal mistake, and wanted to make sure Tolan knew the truth. Tolan reads through tears as the letter explicitly states that none of this was his fault. His eyes go wide in absolute shock as he reads the final official clause. Overwhelmed, he drops the parchment onto the floor. He collapses to his knees. The Duke officially appointed Tolan Krissa as the acting head of the entire fetus family. The letter ends with a final blessing from Sierra the Great. Violent coughing echoes from the high palace tower. Frieren casually notes that someone used way too much magic. The first prince coughs blood onto the floor while Frieren stands over him, casually pointing out his severe deterioration. Clutching the glowing blue stone, the furious first prince demands to know why the treatment isn't magically curing him instantly. Frieren calmly explains he needs to release his magic slowly, while his brother just screams at him. The first prince vows internally to tear Lon Aviran to shreds the second he fully recovers. Lon Aviran just smirks, reading his mind and knowing the magical affliction takes real time to cure. Looking at the palace domes, he feels a tiny bit of guilt hearing that Tolan is still in a coma from the shock. Tolan's eyes snap open as he finally wakes up. He sits up, clutching his bandaged head and demanding to know where he is. A servant rushes to help, warning him his body hasn't recovered, but Tolan firmly orders him to step aside. The panicked servant begs him to stop, noting he was out for 2 weeks and could collapse any time. Tolan adjusts his glasses with fierce determination, demanding to see young Duke Flynn immediately. Walking down the deserted hallway, the servant explains that all their business partners and staff abandoned the ruined family. Cobwebs gather in the corners as the servant reveals they are financially ruined and completely cut off from royal aid. They find young Flynn standing silently by a window. Tolan rushes forward, his eyes full of emotion as he calls out to his young master. Flynn calmly asks if he is feeling all right. Tolan drops to one knee, apologizing for making him worry. Flynn somberly mentions the endless problems, including being unable to hold his father's funeral. Tolan gently interrupts to take charge. Inside the study, Tolan and Flynn talk, while servants whisper maliciously outside. The servants gossip about Flynn actually being a vagrant's child, and plan to abandon the family before they are executed. Tolan hears every toxic word, his expression turning terrifyingly dark as he absorbs the harsh reality of their ruin. He turns to the loyal servant Pale, speaking with absolute authority as the acting head. He forcefully orders Pale to drag the gossiping servants in for severe punishment for slandering the young duke. Glaring coldly through his glasses, he asks if he needs to repeat his command. Pale bows deeply, promising to execute the order immediately. Flynn watches Tolan's sudden, cold transformation in surprise. Tolan firmly tells Flynn that anyone who slanders the family is no longer a member, asking for his understanding. Flynn asks why he is being so harsh. Tolan declares it is his absolute duty to protect the household. He vows to take every necessary measure to ensure their survival. He slowly removes his round glasses, revealing a cold, unyielding stare. Holding his glasses, Tolan cold-bloodedly vows to use absolutely any means necessary to preserve the fetus family. The scene cuts to a dimly lit, ornate palace study at night. The first prince is in a violent rampage, smashing furniture and screaming curses at the top of his lungs. Debris flies everywhere as he destroys everything within reach, entirely unable to contain his boiling frustration. Panting heavily, he stands in the center of his completely wrecked room. A terrified maid peeks in, recoiling as he screams about being stuck in this pathetic situation. His eyes glow with murderous malice as he vows to tear his enemy apart, suddenly remembering an annoying task he has to do tomorrow. Lon Aviran's voice echoes from off-panel, strictly instructing him to claim a specific forest location, but absolutely forbidding him from actually entering it. The first prince angrily demands to know why he has to do this. Lon Aviran calmly replies he has personal business there. Lon Aviran explains that if the first prince officially claims the area, no one else will dare enter, giving him the perfect secret spot. The first prince glares suspiciously, demanding to know what his brother is scheming in the woods alone. Lon Aviran offers a calculating smile, smoothly lying that it's for his medical treatment and telling his brother to just stay in his room. Losing his temper, the first prince violently slams Lon Aviran against the wall, screaming curses directly into his face. Channeling blue magic through his grip, he arrogantly threatens to just consult the Empire's top scholars instead of relying on him. Magic chokes Lon Aviran as his brother growls that he is testing the absolute limits of his patience. Despite bleeding from his mouth, Lon Aviran smirks confidently, telling his brother he better hurry up and find those scholars then. The first prince's arrogance shatters as agonizing pain strikes his body, causing blood to stream from his lips. Lon Aviran coldly points out that using magic just shortened his lifespan even more. The first prince drops to his knees, coughing up a massive pool of blood as the magical backlash completely consumes him. He staggers away in agony. Lon Aviran warns that if he stops the treatment now, he won't be able to move for a week. With a sharp, calculating glare, Lon Aviran asks how the royal family will react when they find out their golden boy collapsed. He coldly points out that the royals won't try to save him, they will just immediately replace him. Lon Aviran walks past his kneeling brother, who helplessly mutters curses under his breath. With glowing red pupils, Lon Aviran cold-bloodedly advises him to use his brain if he actually wants to survive. The first prince twitches in terror. Lon Aviran casually notes that his own patience is running very thin. Striding toward the exit, Lana Viren warns him not to even think about sending spies, noting that disappearing without a trace is his specialty. He steps into the hallway, leaving his brother with a final warning that resisting only delays the cure. Sweating profusely, the first prince screams out, demanding to know what Lana Viren's true goal actually is. Lana Viren looks over his shoulder with a mysterious smile, leaving the question completely unanswered. High above the forest, he soars as a black crow, considering his true goals. He flies effortlessly, clutching a small leather pouch securely in his sharp talons. He swoops down into a quiet, sunlit forest clearing. Reverting to human form, he's incredibly satisfied that the area is completely deserted after scouting it 3 times. He deliberately emptied this sector so he could freely experiment with his transformation powers today. He considers that if he can turn into multiple different animals, this ability is insanely versatile. He needs to figure out the exact mechanical conditions of his power to use it properly in the future. Rummaging through his bag, he realizes the most crucial thing to test is exactly how to unlock new animal forms. He remembers touching the friendly crow's head right before he transformed the first time. He remembers riding the black horse. Physical contact is definitely the main trigger. He sets up a simple wooden stick trap, deciding to test his hypothesis on a small animal first. He places the trap on a mossy log, ready to catch a test subject. He uses high-grade imperial berries as bait, assuming it will easily attract a forest creature. A rustling noise catches his attention immediately. A small brown squirrel hops down the tree toward the bait. He watches the squirrel sniff the berries, hoping to catch the nimble little guy. The squirrel suddenly senses danger and bolts up the tree in a flash. He chuckles, offering a handful of acorns directly to the bold creature instead. The friendly squirrel happily nibbles the acorns right out of his hand while he teasingly asks what it would do if he was a bad guy. With physical contact achieved, he prepares to test the transformation immediately. He strikes a dramatic pose, shouting out loud to trigger the squirrel form. Radiant golden light erupts around him as he commands the power to activate. The light fades, and he is still standing there in human form. The squirrel just stares at him in awkward silence. He rubs his chin, wondering if intense emotional desperation is required, like when he wanted to fly or run away. He tries desperately to force himself to want to climb a tree, but questions if faking the intent actually works. Without warning, the squirrel grabs his leather bag straps and sprints away at full speed. He gapes in absolute shock, screaming at the rodent for stealing his entire bag. He chases the squirrel up a massive tree trunk, yelling at it to just ask for acorns instead of robbing him. He leaps up and triumphantly grabs the bottom strap of the hanging bag. To his utter disbelief, the tiny squirrel pulls with superhuman strength, literally lifting him off his feet. He pulls down with all his body weight, furiously challenging the tiny rodent to a tug-of-war. The leather strap suddenly snaps in two with a sharp crack, completely releasing his grip. He tumbles backward, crashing heavily into the thick forest bushes. Night falls, bathing the grand palace spires in cool blue moonlight. Anna knocks nervously on his study door with dinner. He calmly tells her to enter. She steps inside, praying internally that nothing goes horribly wrong this time. She shrieks in horror. The prince is standing there completely covered in mud and twigs. He casually lies that he just got a bit dirty on a walk. She sets the plates down obediently. He thinks to himself that he almost got caught mid-transformation when she knocked. Holding his torn bag, he laments, failing his experiment and wasting the entire day chasing a crazy squirrel. Anna stares nervously at the ruined bag on the floor. She bows her head, hesitating to speak up. He looks at her curiously, asking what she wants to say. She points a trembling finger at the bag, asking if he brought the creature inside it home with him. His eyes widen in complete shock as he looks down and sees the crazy squirrel sitting right inside his luggage. The squirrel leaps out and darts across the room. He lunges after it, screaming in anger. He manages to grab it by the tail, dangling it upside down. Anna screams in terror, begging the evil prince to spare the poor animal's life. He is totally caught off guard by her panic, asking what she is babbling about. He just yells at her to go fetch him some clean clothes immediately. Anna sprints down the corridor at top speed, desperate to hurry back and save the squirrel. Running back with fresh clothes, she prays she makes it in time. She turns the corner, shouting for the prince to wait, before freezing dead in her tracks. First Princess Mental Abiran is blocking her path. Anna gasps in sheer terror. Mental glares down coldly, recognizing the maid and demanding to know why she is running in such a frantic hurry. Anna instantly drops to her knees and slams her forehead against the floor, begging for mercy while Mental suspiciously eyes the clothes. Back in the study, Lana Viren is yelling at the wild squirrel, asking if it really plans to keep running. He stares it down, firmly stating that the Imperial Palace is no place for a rodent, and he definitely isn't keeping it as a pet. He spreads his arms to corner it, promising to help it return to the forest if it just surrenders quietly. The squirrel stands on its hind legs and chatters defiantly. He warns it that things are about to get rough. He thinks about how completely absurd it is to have a wild rodent running loose in a royal bedroom. He remembers his past life, lying awake in a cramped, trashy apartment listening to rats in the walls. He absolutely detests rodents. He lunges forward, shouting in irritation as he tries to snatch it out of midair. He manages to catch it, sighing in relief and telling it to be good so he can relocate it. The squirrel immediately bites down hard on his hand with a loud crunch. He yanks his hand back in pain, furiously yelling at the tiny creature for daring to bite royalty. The squirrel scampers rapidly up the heavy curtains, easily escaping his threats. He stares up at it perched on the high ceiling molding, muttering in defeat about how fast it climbs. He realizes if he tries to climb up there, the nimble squirrel will just easily run somewhere else. An idea hits him. He considers that transforming into a squirrel would make catching it incredibly easy. His eyes snap wide open as a bizarre physical sensation suddenly ripples through his entire body. Brilliant golden magic surges around him as his body rapidly shrinks. The real squirrel watches in awe from the ceiling. He successfully transforms into a small brown squirrel clinging to the wall. He shouts internally in total shock that his hypothesis actually worked. His glossy black eye gleams with sudden understanding. He just unlocked the true secret to his powers. He wears a confident, smug smirk on his furry face, fully mastering his new form. His tiny paws immediately slip off the smooth wall, sending him plummeting downward in a complete panic. He drops right out of the sky and lands directly on the shoulder of First Princess Mentil, who just walked in. Anna screams in terror from the doorway. Anna stammers nervously, trying to explain that she felt they should have knocked first. Mentil raises her hand to shut the maid up, coldly asking if she seriously expects a princess to walk on eggshells around her little brother. She looks around the study with an ice-cold glare, muttering about how unlikable all the servants are. She pauses, looking down at the carpet in total confusion. Lana Frieren is currently on the floor, actively wrestling the wild squirrel. Mentil stares at the bizarre spectacle. She covers her face in sheer disgust, thinking it is absolutely revolting to let wild beasts roam a royal bedroom. Meanwhile, Anna is standing behind her with glowing eyes, completely overwhelmed by how cute the two playing squirrels look. Lana Frieren looks incredibly annoyed while holding the wild rodent down, complaining internally that this whole situation is driving him crazy. The scene transitions to the next day under a clear blue sky. Back in human form, he gently strokes the now tame squirrel on his desk, smiling at the friendly rodent. He notes that the creature hasn't left his side since he saved it from falling last night. He feeds it an acorn, casually advising the squirrel to just stay hidden in his room since taking it back is too much of a hassle. Resting his chin on his hand, he smirks. He finally figured out the ridiculously specific condition for his transformation. He thinks back to his first transformation into the glowing red-eyed crow. He remembers the wild black horse. He realizes all three animals shared one very specific commonality right before he changed. A split visual shows his hand touching the nape of the crow, the horse, and the squirrel. Unlocking an animal form requires directly touching the nape of its neck. He touches the squirrel's nape, muttering about how insanely niche and absurd the activation condition is. He shifts his focus back to the real threat. First Princess Mentil Abiran is his biggest problem right now. He recalls her terrifying, ethereal smile, noting that reading about her in the novel didn't prepare him for how dangerous she actually is in person. He remembers Anna distracting Mentil just long enough for him to escape out the window as a squirrel, saving him from a disastrous discovery. He recalls stepping back into the room in human form, thinking he had safely dodged the bullet. Mentil had smiled and remarked on his weird pets before taking her leave, and he politely told her to come back another time. But then she turned back with a bone-chilling glare, officially commanding him to come to her quarters tomorrow. Framed by an ominous red background, she explicitly stated they had urgent matters to discuss. Sitting in his armchair, he anxiously wonders if she figured out his secret and what she actually wants from him. He worries she might have discovered he is a transmigrated imposter, terrified of the consequences. He throws his hands up in defeat, telling the squirrel he has absolutely no choice but to obey her summons. An armored guard bows respectfully as Lana Frieren arrives at the first princess's grand palace. He stands before her gigantic golden doors, noting that the novel's description of her wealth really didn't do it justice. The doors open to reveal Mentil sitting on an elevated velvet throne. She greets him warmly. She invites him to sit on a plush couch, but he politely declines and immediately asks why she summoned him. Her warm expression instantly freezes into a terrifying glare as she asks if he didn't hear her command to sit down. He flinches and immediately sits, humbling, apologizing for his rudeness. She bursts into a graceful laugh, waving off the apology and amusedly calling him impatient. Framed by sinister spiderwebs, she reflects suspiciously on how her little brother suddenly turned into a completely different person. Sitting stiffly under her intense gaze, he realizes this overwhelming psychological pressure is exactly why he wanted to avoid her. The narration explains that royal magic usually manifests as natural elements, like the emperor's fire or the first prince's water. But Mental's unique magic stands far above the rest. She places her glowing blue hand directly onto his head. Her unique manas is classified as absolute human mind control. She smiles sweetly as radiant magic flares into his mind, asking him to just be honest with her. Despite the magic surging through him, he stays completely calm. He knows from the novel that her mind control explicitly does not work on him. He realizes she must be incredibly frustrated that her absolute power is failing, deducing that is why she summoned him. Her mind control only fails under two specific conditions. The first is that the target must be related to her by blood. The second condition is that the target must feel genuine familial love for her. She waits for him to spill his secrets. He screams internally in horror, realizing the original prince must have genuinely loved this terrifying woman for the immunity to exist. He panics, frantically wondering why the magic is failing on him now since he feels absolutely zero love for her. The scene cuts to a dark subterranean cavern with a roaring waterfall. Water drips steadily from sharp limestone stalactites. A single glowing drop of water falls from the cave ceiling. It lands directly on the closed eyelids of Duke Fetus, who is lying unconscious on the stone floor. His eyes snap open, his battle-scarred face illuminated in the dark cave. He sits up groaning, clutching his head in severe physical pain. Staggering to his feet, he looks around in total confusion, assuming he must be dead and in the afterlife. He gasps in shock as he spots Rattel sitting calmly on a rock with a sword. Rattel quietly informs the old hero that he survived. The Duke stares in disbelief, shocked to be alive. Rattel notes he was out for so long he almost gave up on him. Rattel draws his broadsword, calmly stating that it is time for some questions. He points the blade directly at the Duke's chest, asking if he is a person truly loyal to the Oberon Empire. The Duke demands to know what this means. With glowing yellow eyes, Rattel cold-bloodedly demands a simple yes or no, declaring that the answer will decide whether the Duke lives or dies. Back at the palace, Mentil channels her mind magic into Lan Aviran, internally questioning why her absolute control is failing. She glares down with an expectant smile, demanding to know why he suddenly transformed into a completely different person. He stays totally calm, wondering if his transmigration into this body somehow broke her magical conditions. He recalls that the novel gave almost zero background details on the useless seventh prince. Mentel mocks him, stating she can practically hear the gears turning in his head and asking why it is so hard to answer. Sweat trickles down his face as he wonders if this ruthless princess will actually just let him walk away after defying her power. She pulls her hand back, the magic dissipating. He desperately tries to figure out how the original prince would respond. She turns her back, casually announcing that since he refuses to speak, she will just have to use another method. She claps her hands sharply, summoning the Imperial Knights into her chamber. Heavily armored guards burst in with drawn swords. She casually complains that her little brother is being uncooperative. The guards flinch in horror as she orders them to literally slit the prince's mouth open to make him talk. Lan Aviran gasps in shock at the sudden, violent escalation. The guards drop to one knee, desperately pleading with her not to make them mutilate royalty. Surrounded by an intimidating blue aura, she glares down coldly, stating in red text that she absolutely despises noise. Her mind magic instantly takes hold of the knights, forcing their gloved hands to draw their weapons. The knights rise with hollow, glowing eyes, pointing their sharp blades directly at Lan Aviran's throat. He remains seated, completely stoic despite having multiple swords hovering inches from his face. She smiles elegantly over her shoulder, warning him to choose his next words very carefully if he wants to survive. Sweat glimmers on his cheek as he delivers a blunt, shocking statement, declaring that his mother has passed away. Her pleasant smile instantly freezes. He stands up calmly amidst the blades. She turns fully toward him, totally confused by the sudden confession. She stares at him seriously, asking how he knows that and if he has been in secret contact with her this whole time. He lowers his head with a troubled look, clarifying they haven't spoken directly. He weaves a story about his mother giving him a magical blue gemstone necklace, promising they would reunite as long as it shined. He claims the crystal slowly dimmed before shattering completely just recently. Looking incredibly sorrowful, he says the initial panic eventually gave way to a heartbreaking realization. He solemnly states he realized she finally passed away and was laid to rest in her homeland. Mental is totally buying it, but the narration boxes generously remind us that this entire sob story is a massive, shameless lie. The text notes that his mother was the only mistress to ever successfully flee the imperial household. The original novel only ever presumed she went back to her hometown. A dark memory shows royals gossiping that she fled because she gave birth to a cursed, black-haired prince. The truth is, his biological mother never even appears until the very end of the novel. Mental notes she thought he hated his mother for abandoning him. He replies that his resentment faded and became much more complicated over time. He pulls a cheap black gemstone necklace from his pocket, muttering that maybe he only stared at the eastern sky because he missed her. He softly confesses that he just genuinely missed his mom. Mental acknowledges his pain, asking if losing her changed his perspective on his remaining family. He casually drops the cheap necklace onto the table, remarking how fascinating it is that a lifetime of resentment can just vanish in an instant. Leaning in with an incredibly vulnerable expression, he murmurs that maybe that complex bond is just what family truly means. Her cold expression completely melts into a touched, emotional gaze. He finishes his performance, claiming that is simply how he feels now. She orders her mind-controlled knights to sheathe their swords and leave the room immediately. With glowing cyan eyes, she casts a spell, commanding the knights to completely erase everything that just happened from their memories. The massive golden doors swing shut, locking them alone in the room. She steps close with genuine sympathy. He nervously wonders if his lie actually worked as she speaks softly about his pain. She gently holds both of his hands. He celebrates internally, realizing he successfully completely fooled her. She pulls him into a warm, sisterly embrace, telling him he is still her dear brother. He grits his teeth, wondering if she is just messing with him now. Looking over her shoulder, he realizes it was totally natural for her to get suspicious when her absolute mind control failed on him. The text confirms he survived, noting that the necklace was literally just a cheap trinket he found on the ground earlier. His thoughts shift to Duke Fetus. He recalls that the Duke was supposed to fall down a valley and lose his legs during the execution. He wonders if the Duke actually survived the altered timeline. Inside the cave, the Duke grits his teeth in agony, clutching his broken right leg and knowing he can't move recklessly. Ratel stands over him, bluntly pointing out that his leg is completely shattered. The Duke realizes that being unarmed with a broken leg gives him absolutely zero chance in a fight against this guy. He recognizes Ratel's flawless combat stance, knowing the young swordsman is incredibly skilled and dangerous. Sweating profusely, the Duke holds up his hands defensively, begging the kid to put the sword away first. Ratel calmly sheathes his blade, noting the Duke must have just woken up. Ratel explains he saw the flying water sphere crossing the sky and chased it down. He adds that when the sphere crashed, he assumed whoever was inside was blown to pieces. The Duke listens in shock, realizing Ratel is describing his execution. He frantically wonders how he survived that impact. He realizes the heavy backpack full of magical stones must have absorbed the water magic and shielded him from the blast. He pats the ground, realizing the bag must have fallen off during the crash. Ratel explains he just stumbled upon the bloodied old man in the cave by pure chance. The Duke is completely stunned by the reality of his miraculous rescue. Lanaviren's cold face flashes in his memory from the execution. He gasps internally, wondering if the seventh prince actually orchestrated his entire survival from the start. He sweats in intense conflict, realizing his savior is an anti-imperial heretic. The tragic memory of the dead child under the carriage flashes again. He remembers Tolan weeping on the forest grass after being assaulted. Lanaviren's cruel taunt echoes, calling him an imperial dog whose son will just grow up to be another dog. The Duke grits his teeth in resolute decision, preparing his answer for Ratel. He thinks of his young son Flynn, calling him his precious treasure. Flynn's bright smile symbolizes the Duke's ultimate reason for living. The statue of Sierra the Great looms as his father's voice commands him to serve as the sword of royalty. His father's voice echoes, ordering him to eradicate all heretics. He closes his eyes and exhales a heavy breath, finally letting go of 1,000 years of blind family loyalty. Looking Ratel dead in the eye, he completely rejects his past, claiming he knows nothing about loyalty to the Empire and is just a senile old man who fell down. The Duke limps unsteadily through the cave, thanking Ratel for treating his leg and promising not to ask where they are going. He complains about the rope tied around his ankle. Ratel bluntly refuses to untie it without even looking back. The Duke keeps trying to persuade him, warning that if he falls, it will just make Ratel's job harder. Ratel stops dead in his tracks and glares over his shoulder at the complaining old man. With a swift, violent motion, Ratel yanks the rope hard. The Duke stumbles forward with a painful grunt, realizing the kid is totally ignoring his complaints. Following deeper into the tunnel, the Duke is shocked to find such a massive cave so close to the Imperial Forest, recalling Ratel mentioning the heretic god Amika. He remembers the lore that the Amica faction was supposedly wiped out 50 years ago, wondering if they've been hiding here ever since. He tries to mentally reconstruct his crash trajectory, estimating this cave is somewhere near the central tower. He formulates an escape plan, determined to memorize the layout so he can lead Imperial troops back to wipe them out later. He grimly endures the pain in his shattered leg, silently tracking every twist and turn of the path. He chuckles bitterly at himself, realizing how absurd it is that a betrayed, executed man is still instinctively planning military tactics for the Empire. Rattel stops in front of a solid, dead-end rock wall. Rattel turns around and plainly asks for his name. The Duke hesitates. Standing tall with quiet dignity, the veteran warrior formally states his full name, Agony Fetus. Rattel touches the wall, making golden magical runes flare across the stone. He admits he was shocked to find the Duke, since this cave is protected by divine magic. Drawing his sword slightly, Rattel sternly notes that no ordinary person, especially an Imperial citizen, can enter this sanctuary by accident. Rattel forcefully drives his sword into the floor, detonating golden magic across the cavern. A massive, intricate magic circle expands, bathing the dark cave in divine light. The Duke shields his eyes, gasping in shock at the overwhelming holy power. Rattel stands silhouetted in the light storm as the Duke panics, wondering what is happening. The rock wall dissolves into a glowing portal, revealing a breathtaking holy temple city. Rattel states there are only 2 reasons the Duke is here. The text declares the first possibility. He is an Imperial spy sent to exterminate them. As the light settles, Rattel presents the second option. The Duke arrived by the divine calling of God Amica. With glowing golden eyes, Rattel officially welcomes the Duke into Amica's sacred domain. Back at the palace, Rasia is groaning in pain inside his moonlit study. Sweating heavily, he clutches the glowing blue magical stone, desperately needing relief. Frieren lounges comfortably on a velvet sofa. He thinks the accelerated timeline is actually better for getting the Duke and Rattel moving early. He smiles, hoping for news about Rattel soon, feeling only a tiny bit guilty for making the old Duke suffer. Rasha violently slams the stone on the table, furiously demanding more magic stones to speed up his recovery. Friren's face darkens as he glares up with cold, predatory eyes, asking in red text if his brother really just dared to yell at him. Raja flinches in terror, backing down instantly and stammering that he is just frustrated with the slow treatment. Frieren leans back, advising him to have patience before he completely ruins his body. Rasha desperately begs for a faster method. Frieren asks if there isn't something far more dangerous currently ruining his health. Rasha is totally confused when he brings up the hookah. Rasha remembers Frieren telling him to quit smoking on day 1 if he cared about his health. Frieren offers a mocking smile, suggesting quitting is a good idea anyway. Rasha growls, calling him an infuriating bastard. Rasha paces the floor furiously. Frieren notes internally that the hookah is genuinely destroying his brother's physical constitution. Rasha gulps down a huge glass of wine to cope. Frieren notes that literally everything Rasha consumes acts as poison to his magically afflicted body. Walking to the door, Frieren concludes that Rasha will be reliant on his treatments forever unless the dark seed in his body is removed. He turns back, announcing they should wrap up so they aren't late for the evening ritual. The royal family gathers in the grand sanctuary hall for the ritual. The first prince channels his blue water magic flawlessly before the ancient tablet. He stands there arrogant and glowing, showing off his perfectly stable aura. Rasia flatters him lavishly, praising his massive magical output with a fake smile. The emperor officially concludes the ritual from his throne. The royals and nobles begin filing out of the hall. Frieren stays seated, waiting for everyone to leave, but the hot-headed third prince suddenly shouts at him. The third prince aggressively grabs his shoulder, rudely demanding to know why the black bug is still sitting there. He yanks Friren's hair, mocking him about his runaway mother. Frieren glares silently, knowing he has to deal with this brat eventually. Mental approaches with cold elegance, remarking that Frieren looked gloomy the entire ritual. The third prince drops the hair in sheer terror and stammers excuses. Frieren calmly greets his sister. Mentile sweetly asks if he's unwell. He casually replies he's fine, joking that the ritual is just boring. She smiles but gently warns him not to make his boredom so obvious during such an important imperial event. She politely bids them farewell and walks away. The second she leaves, the third prince grabs Frieren by the collar again, screaming in rage. Frieren just sighs at how bothersome this is getting. The first prince suddenly steps in, clamping a firm hand on the third prince's shoulder. He glares down with cold authority, making the younger brother pale in shock. The third prince quickly lets go, slapping on a nervous fake smile and claiming they were just exchanging pleasantries. The first prince coldly dismisses him, telling him to go attend to his own business. Frieren walks away alongside the first prince, flashing a subtle, mocking smirk at his frustrated brother. The first and second princes walk down the dim corridor, whispering together. The third prince glares after them, furious that Frieren is always clinging to the first prince. He turns to his aide. He asks his aide about Tolan Krissa, the new acting head of the fetus family. With a greedy grin, he notes that Tolan is plotting something big in the Central Territory. A flashback shows the first prince dismissing the fetus family as completely irrelevant bugs. The first prince sneered that the fetus territory would fall back into his hands in a year anyway. The third prince's eyes gleam with a sudden, devious inspiration. He smirks, telling his aide there is no need to wait a full year because he has a brilliant plan. Later, the third prince slams his fist against the wall, confronting Frieren again. He grabs his collar, furiously demanding to know what he is planning and using his full title. Channeling a small flame in his hand, he demands to know why the older siblings care about a cripple, threatening to burn him alive. Frieren stares at the flame with total indifference, asking if burning a royal wouldn't put him in a tough spot. The third prince stammers at his lack of fear. Frieren coldly mocks the weak magic, saying that tiny spark would take forever to burn anything. The third prince sweats as Frieren points out the severe political consequences of attacking a sibling. Frieren steps in close, offering a dangerous whisper that leaves the third prince completely stunned. With absolute authority, Frieren commands him to fix his shitty attitude and stop speaking informally to his elder brother. Back in the forest, Frieren reaches his hand out toward a massive snarling gray wolf, confidently assuming this will be as easy as the squirrel. The giant wolf bares its fangs and unleashes a terrifying predatory roar right in his face. He nervously backs away, looking at his trembling wrist and seriously doubting it will survive trying to touch that monster's neck. He is sprinting through the dense forest at absolute top speed, screaming in pure panic. The giant wolf is right on his heels, tearing up the dirt. He clutches the squirrel, convinced he is genuinely about to die. He glares at the squirrel, furiously yelling at it for triggering this mess while it squeaks back frantically. A flashback shows him carefully trying to coax the wolf so he could just touch its nape and escape. But the crazy squirrel suddenly bit the giant wolf right on the nose. He screams in frustration about why the rodent had to pick a fight right then. He keeps running, yelling at the squirrel to go die by itself if it wants to be lunched so badly. He leaps off a rocky outcrop as the wolf snaps at his heels, desperately trying to decide which animal to turn into. He realizes a land animal isn't fast enough, and he doesn't have the time to take off as a crow. Gritting his teeth, he frantically wishes he had a form that could run and fly at the exact same time. The tame squirrel looks up from his palm with a curious little squeak. The giant wolf leaps high into the air, jaws wide open for the killing strike. The massive predator is silhouetted against the sky, practically swallowing the screen. Suddenly, Frieren transforms into a majestic winged wolf and soars gracefully into the clouds, exhaling a massive sigh of relief. The winged wolf's sharp eye glows as the wind rushes past. He ponders exactly how he just pulled that off. Bro just unlocked custom avatars. He realizes his transformation power is actually customizable, letting him combine animals freely. In a busy town market, citizens gossip about the fetus family taking over the Central Territory at the cost of a rebellion. They wonder why the Duke sacrificed himself for it, guessing the new acting head Tolan must be just as crazy. Two commoners excitedly whisper about buried treasure in the territory, planning to go dig it up. Two street urchins plan to use the crowded distraction to pick some pockets. Rattel stands quietly in the crowd, watching the chaos and wondering what Tolan is actually trying to achieve. Tolan stands tall on a stone dais, looking completely resolute in a sharp suit. He raises two fingers, loudly proclaiming a strict deadline of exactly 2 months. He announces that any vagrant still lingering in the Holy Temple district after the deadline will be severely punished. The crowd erupts into panicked outrage, screaming about having nowhere to go and accusing him of leaving them to die. The two urchin boys flee in terror, deciding to run while they still can. Wealthy aristocrats watch from a balcony, assuming Tolan is just playing the villain to suck up to the royals and save his house. Tolan stays perfectly calm and drops the real announcement. He declares the fetus family is building a hospital. He announces they will construct a hospital and actually educate the local commoners in the medical arts. The nobles are completely stunned. They think educating commoners in noble arts is an absolute scandal. Two noblewomen smirk cruelly, predicting this absurd venture will just bankrupt the fetus house entirely. Rattel watches from the shadows, calculating that the shunned fetus family has zero chance of pulling this off. Just as Rattel dismisses the project, a powerful voice suddenly booms across the square, demanding to know who dares laugh at him. An opulent white and gold carriage rolls in. Rattel turns in shock at the arrival of this holy figure. The polished golden door swings open. Pristine white robes and golden boots step down onto the street. High Priest Vesper raises his hand, loudly declaring that he personally vouches for Tolan Krissa in the name of God. The entire crowd instantly drops to their knees in reverent awe, chanting his holy name. Vesper walks gracefully across the plaza, his robes trailing majestically. He offers a warm, benevolent smile and shakes Tolan's hand in front of everyone. He preaches to the crowd, declaring all citizens equal travelers on the same divine path. The townspeople weep in prayer as Vesper praises Tolan for walking the path of virtue despite his family's sins. Rattel watches sharply as Vesper publicly throws the full support of the church behind the Fetus family's project. Vesper raises a glowing palm over Tolan's head, praising his bravery. Radiant white magic shines down, bestowing a holy blessing upon Tolan's atonement project. Tolan bows deeply in gratitude, and Vesper warmly replies that it's his holy duty. Vesper invites Tolan into his private carriage so they can finalize their plans at the temple. Tolan bows his head, but his eyes are ice cold behind his glasses. He internally curses the priest, knowing he only showed up for the money and political clout. They walk to the carriage together. Tolan fumes, remembering Vesper demanded a massive 50% cut of the profits just to show up. He notes the priest's greedy smirk, disgusted by how happily Vesper accepted those extortionate terms. Stepping into the carriage, Tolan knows winning over this corrupt priest was an absolute necessity for his master plan. Right before getting in, Tolan locks eyes directly with Rattel in the crowd, softly saying it's nice to see young Master Melio again. Rattel flinches in shock, pulling his hood down and wondering how on earth the acting head spotted him. Inside the carriage, Tolan stares out the window with a sharp glare, noting that changing the world is never easy. Meanwhile, the third prince violently slams his fist on his desk, screaming in rage about the high priest's sudden intervention. He realizes Vesper's endorsement forces the nobility to play along. Raja watches his brother's tantrum completely unbothered. Raja smirks arrogantly, telling him not to worry because he already has the perfect solution to ruin Tolan. The third prince storms out in a fury, screaming that he needs to kill someone. Raja just chuckles. Rasia swirls his wine glass by the window, gazing out over the city. In a dim room, an informant confirms Tolan's background as the late Duke's personal aide. Raja swirls his wine with a sinister smile, muttering about how annoying certain recent events have been. The first and second princes walk down the corridor together, discussing politics. The third prince aggressively stops Lan Aviren in the hallway, demanding a quick word. He asks Lan Aviren if he knows about Tolan Krissa. With a greedy grin, he brings up Tolan's massive new Central Territory project. A flashback shows the first prince dismissing the Fetus family entirely. He had arrogantly boasted that their land would just revert to him when they collapse in a year anyway. The third prince's eyes gleam with dark, scheming intent. The informant cleans up broken glass in the dark room, promising Raja he'll handle the mess. Raja complains that the sunny weather is just as annoying as his brother's rapidly failing health. He rests his head back, silently plotting his next move in the succession war. His face twists into a demonic grin. He realizes the most annoying thing of all is that the first prince suddenly seems to be recovering. Pale knocks on the sunlit study window, announcing himself to Tolan. Pale reports that applications from nobles wanting to join the hospital project have massively exceeded capacity. Tolan is extremely satisfied. However, Pale warns that the 2-month eviction deadline is fast approaching and many vagrants still haven't left the district. Tolan adjusts his glasses calmly, telling Pale not to deploy troops because he already has a specific strategy handled. Pale obediently drops the subject and hands over an official letter from House Krissa. Tolan stares at his estranged family's crest with immediate suspicion, wondering what they could possibly want now. He unrolls it, noting that his family actually wants to visit him here. His eyes go wide behind his glasses as he realizes the letter was personally signed by his older brother. 2 weeks pass. A maid carries a tea tray down the grand corridor. She opens the doors to the reception room, where Tolan's older brother, Ego Krissa, is waiting. A fresh cup of hot tea is set on the table between them. Tolan silently sips his tea, just observing his unwanted guest. Ego drops the news that their father, Count Krissa, was placed under house arrest last night. Ego explains the crown suddenly audited them for illegal activities, and if convicted, their father is going straight to the imperial prison. Ego desperately asks if Tolan truly believes their honest father is a criminal, emphasizing the danger their family is in. Tolan just keeps sipping his tea as Ego defends their father's diligent, modest life. Ego glares across the table, directly asking if Tolan is really going to play dumb about why the crown is suddenly attacking them. Tolan coldly asks if Igo is blaming him for their father's downfall. Igo casually mentions hearing rumors about Tolan using local vagrants for cheap construction labor. He notes Tolan just happened to find a massive, capable workforce right where he needed them for his hospital. A memory shows Tolan feeding starving kids. Igo bluntly states he doesn't care if Tolan wants to play saint. Ego glares down, reminding him that the first prince explicitly ordered those vagrants wiped out, and Tolan's defiance is what caused this audit. Tolan stands up coldly, telling his brother to get out if he's just here to waste time, declaring his absolute loyalty to House Fetus. Ego looks deeply disappointed, urging Tolan to reconsider since the Count is still his father. Tolan's jaw twitches as he grinds his teeth in suppressed fury. His eyes darken as he bitterly remembers that 13 years ago, it was his father who threw him out of the family in the first place. Mentel strides through a dark corridor, internally complaining about the endless, annoying ritual preparations. She walks through the underground temple, absolutely hating being cooped up down here. She is completely suffocated by being surrounded by lowly servants all day. She stops in surprise as her mother, the Empress, suddenly appears behind her. The dignified Empress calmly addresses her daughter. Mentil offers a polite greeting. The Empress asks if she's abandoning her holy duties. Mentil mocks her mother, asking if she's suddenly actually worried about her. The Empress shows genuine concern, saying she worries every single day about what terrible mistakes Mentel might make. Mentel coldly dismisses the affection, telling her that seeing her face is enough. The Empress walks away to meet the Emperor, firmly ordering Mentel back to work. Mentel watches her go, wondering why the Emperor is sneaking around meeting mistresses right before a major ritual. She wonders if her mother is lying, wishing she could just use her mind control on her to get the truth. Suddenly, she freezes in the middle of the hallway. Her eyes go wide in absolute shock as a massive realization hits her. Her eyes glow with radiant magic as her mind control power triggers entirely on its own. Waves of blue magic ripple out from her body in the dim corridor. Out in the forest, a blue streak of magic arcs through the bright sky. It crashes violently into the trees with a loud thud and a high-pitched squeak. Lan of Frieren, currently a squirrel, is desperately clinging to a branch after the rough landing. He reverts to human form, falling to the ground and coughing violently, just glad to be alive. Leaning against a tree, he realizes his transformation power is getting weirder and way more versatile the more he uses it. He staggers up, sweating heavily, suspecting there has to be a hidden drawback to this insane power. Horror fills his eyes as an intense, burning heat suddenly surges through his veins. He worries he's shortening his own lifespan. He collapses face first into the dirt, feeling completely overheated before passing out. The tame squirrel quickly scampers over to his motionless body. It pokes his face, chattering in concern. It nudges his cheek, desperately trying to wake him up. When that fails, it just jumps on his face and starts rapidly slapping him. It stands proudly on his head in a heroic pose, acting like it just defeated him. It tilts its head, confused when he still doesn't wake up. It squeaks in annoyance, wondering if he really just passed out cold. Perched on a rock, the squirrel scoffs at the frail human. The giant gray wolf suddenly appears from the shadows, roaring ferociously. The squirrel freezes. Instead of running, the squirrel jumps right onto the wolf's snout and starts slapping it, yelling at it to keep the noise down while the human is sleeping. The terrifying monster whimpers pathetically as the tiny rodent lectures it for being too uptight. The massive wolf lies completely flat in submission, asking if the squirrel is talking about the kid over there. The squirrel crosses its tiny arms, looking incredibly smug and proud. Surrounded by magical sparkles, it laughs in total contentment. The wolf stares in awe as radiant golden magic begins rising from Lan of Frieren's unconscious body. He sleeps peacefully, bathed in a warm, divine golden light. A radiant golden spirit materializes beside them, solemnly declaring that this boy is the chosen human they've all been waiting for. The giant wolf throws its head back and unleashes a majestic howl into the heavens to acknowledge the chosen one. Flocks of birds start singing merrily across the entire forest. Noble stags gather as the spirit commands them to spread the word to every animal in the woods. The spirit smiles warmly, officially declaring that their long-awaited savior has finally arrived. Lan of Frieren just keeps sleeping peacefully while the spirit decides to let him rest since he's still weak. Out on a sunny garden terrace, Rasha complains that Tolan went out of his way to build a relief center for the vagrants too. Rasha sprawls on a lounge chair, dismissing the fetus family as harmless bugs trying to provoke them. The first prince is absolutely furious, scoffing that those beggars are useless and complaining that thinking about them just makes him angry. The third prince walks up with a confident smile, surprised to find his older brothers relaxing on the terrace. He bows respectfully, and the first prince offers a cold, nonchalant greeting. The third prince immediately starts aggressively flattering the first prince about his incredible magical display during the ritual. He waves his arms, loudly declaring that the first prince is obviously the only one destined to rule the empire. The first prince smirks arrogantly, mocking that he'll be sad when he takes the throne because he won't get to see his beloved little brother anymore. The third prince's fake smile shatters as the first prince cold-bloodedly reveals he is sending him to guard a remote border. The third prince stammers in panic. The first prince plans to banish literally all his siblings to the provinces the second he becomes emperor. He flashes a dark smile, satisfied that the third prince's fate is completely sealed in the barren borderlands. He strides away confidently, always intending to expel everyone except for one sibling. Rasia casually remarks that it's better the kid learned about his banishment early anyway. Rasa teasingly asks why the first prince doesn't just give his high-ranking job to the kid. The first prince scoffs, though he admits the break sounds nice. The first prince gets serious, asking if Rasha thought about his plan to ruin Tolan Krissa. Rasha smiles confidently, casually confirming the plan is already in motion. The first prince smirks in the sunlight, eagerly looking forward to watching the fetus family completely collapse this year. A fancy carriage rolls toward the palace. The fetus family just acquired a brand new coal mine in the south. Inside, Tolan instructs Pale to trade their accumulated debt interest directly for the management rights to the mine. Pale reports that their labor situation stabilized perfectly after Tolan's public speech. Tolan listens calmly as Pale confirms the hospital project is moving smoothly. Pale looks up, casually mentioning that an official message arrived from House Krissa this morning. Tolan's face darkens instantly as Pale delivers the news that Count Krissa was thrown into the Imperial dungeon. Tolan smiles coldly, noting how incredibly convenient it is that his father gets locked up right when he has to attend the royal assembly. He wonders if the crown is attacking his birth family specifically to punish him for saving the temple vagrants. His eye gleams behind his glasses, asking himself if this is their way of suffocating him for Duke Fetus's rebellion. Pale asks if he's alright. Tolan calmly reassures him not to worry. The carriage enters the massive palace gardens. Tolan declines headache medicine, just internally complaining about how obnoxiously huge the garden is. Tolan's polished boots step confidently onto the marble floor of the assembly hall. He walks alone into the magnificent room filled with aristocratic figures. The nobles openly glare and whisper insults at him, but he keeps a completely stoic face. A plump, friendly noble named Duke Milio walks up and greets him enthusiastically. Milio praises the hospital project. Tolan acts modest, crediting High Priest Vesper and the crown for the success. Milio chuckles, mentioning his son saw Tolan looking very majestic during his speech. Milio remarks that if the late Duke Fetus saw this success, he never would have rebelled against the Empire. He pats Tolan's shoulder, advising him to properly educate young Flynn. He adds a thinly veiled warning, saying it would be a shame if Flynn grew up to be a traitor like his dad. Tolan's expression turns ice cold. He asks if Milio is talking about the son he saw hiding like a rat in the crowd. Tolan glares piercingly, sarcastically asking if cowardice is the great education House Milio prides itself on. Milio turns red with rage. Tolan calmly brings up Milio's steel business, noting it relies on the coal mine the Fetus family just acquired. Tolan casually asks what would happen to that precious steel business if he simply refused to sell them coal. Milio sweats in absolute shock, realizing Tolan literally holds his entire livelihood hostage. Tolan walks away, coldly advising the Duke to watch his mouth in the future. The grand doors burst open as the announcer proclaims the arrival of the princes. Every noble in the room immediately stands up and bows deeply. The aristocrats keep their heads bowed in total silence. The first and second princes march down the aisle, radiating absolute authority in their matching uniforms. Tolan glares with intense hatred at Rasha, internally raging that the man who murdered Duke Fetus feels absolutely zero remorse. Rasha looks over the bowing crowd with complete, arrogant indifference. His golden eye glows with a predatory light as he takes his seat. Tolan flinches, sweating under the crushing pressure of Rasha's aura. The first prince commands everyone to sit and formally starts the meeting. After wrapping up border discussions, he moves to the next agenda item. He turns directly to Tolan, asking for a progress report on the Central District project. Tolan stands up sharply, bowing and officially introducing himself as the acting head of the Fetus House. He reports that the hospital framing is done and medical training is actively progressing alongside slum relief. The first prince listens thoughtfully, recalling that the emperor actually gave him the rights to that land after the hunt. The first prince notes that Duke Fetus stole that authority, asking if this hospital is the result of that theft. Rasha taps the table with a smug smile, sarcastically noting that public safety has improved. The first prince suddenly offers a warm smile, publicly praising the fetus house for their incredible work. He starts clapping loudly, putting on a show for the entire assembly. He declares Tolin's work worthy of high praise and great expectations. Walking along the table, he contrasts the fetus house with useless nobles, proclaiming they truly deserve royal support. Tolin bows deeply, expressing honor and promising to keep working hard. The first prince steps down and whispers right over Tolin's shoulder, noting that humility alone doesn't feed people. His face turns dark and predatory as he whispers that managing this massive project alone must be a crushing burden. Tolin's eye dilates in sheer panic. The first prince offers unlimited imperial support, but only if Tolin officially asks for it. Tolin realizes the horrifying trap. Accepting royal aid means completely surrendering their independence and becoming a puppet. A memory of the proud late duke flashes through his mind, reminding him of the honor he swore to protect. Tolin squeezes his eyes shut, making an agonizing, unyielding decision. He opens his eyes, bows deeply, and formally begs the first prince for imperial medical personnel and equipment. The first prince's eyes gleam with victory as Tolin promises the fetus house will never forget this grace. He wears a completely satisfied smirk. His political trap worked flawlessly. Outside the window, a black crow sits in the dark branches, watching everything. Frieren reflects that he missed a lot of political maneuvering while he was stuck in the forest. With a glowing red eye, he concludes it is finally time to re-establish discipline across the empire. The nobles file out of the grand hall as the assembly is officially dismissed. Tolin walks down the steps toward his carriage, with Pale cautiously asking what just happened inside. Tolin firmly orders Pale to get in the carriage so they can leave immediately. Before they can leave, an unexpected voice calls out to him. Tolin turns to see his brother Ego, who smugly mentions hearing about the first prince's intervention. Ego smiles, telling Tolin to be grateful since this royal support means their father will be released from prison soon. Tolin stares him down coldly, bluntly stating that he only asked for support to benefit the fetus family, not their father. He turns his back to leave, ignoring Ego's suggestion to come greet their father upon his release. Inside the carriage, Tolin grinds his teeth in anger, bitterly wondering when his estranged birth family felt entitled to act this friendly. Under the bright sky, the first prince bursts into triumphant laughter, mocking Tolin's terrified face during the meeting. He boasts to Raja that Tolin's precious project is completely under their control now. He explains they can manipulate the district freely, under the guise of royal aid. Raja chuckles, asking how they should ruin Tolin next. Raja smirks, noting that whatever happens, the blame will fall entirely on Tolin, and it's going to be hilarious to watch. The first prince stops abruptly, suggesting they take the conversation somewhere private. Raja looks startled. The first prince coughs softly, his face going pale. He changes his mind, saying they'll talk later. He rushes off toward his private quarters to rest, leaving a confused Raja behind. Raja strokes his chin, watching his brother hurry away. With glowing golden eyes, Raja suspects something is seriously wrong with how much time his brother is spending locked in his room lately. The first prince unlocks the heavy doors to his private study. He steps inside, cursing his worsening physical condition for ruining his good mood. He screams in absolute terror when he sees Frieren lounging casually at his desk. He furiously demands to know how Frieren keeps bypassing security. Frieren just notes that his brother looks happy with the meeting results. The first prince forces himself to calm down, growling that they should just get the magical treatment over with. Frieren steps up smoothly, mentioning he has a small favor to ask first. The first prince's eyes go wide in shock as Frieren reveals he already knows every detail about the central land agreement. The first prince yells that it's none of his business, but Frieren calmly claims that ensuring the project succeeds is very much his concern. Frieren delivers his actual demand. He orders the first prince to delay the hospital construction to let the news of imperial support spread. The first prince glares in stunned silence, totally unable to comprehend this bizarre request. Frieren channels his blue magical aura, ready to start the treatment. Back at the fetus estate, Tolin is writing an official letter by lamplight. He sits completely focused at his desk in the quiet study. Behind his dark glasses, he wonders what the first prince's sudden support actually signifies for his house. He realizes the royal aid is actually a death sentence designed to crush them before they can gain any real power. He pauses, debating whether to fully commit to the ducal house or just wait and see what happens politically. A memory of the first prince's arrogant, patronizing smirk flashes through his mind. He remembers the first prince promising to show him what imperial support truly means. Suddenly, intense physical agony racks his body. His hand trembles and drops the quill pen. Sweat streams down his pale face behind his glasses. He slumps over the desk with a painful groan, clutching his chest tightly. Panting heavily, He thinks the pain is absolutely unbearable. He grits his teeth, wondering if this chest pain is from the guilt of the Duke's death or his fear of failing young Flynn. A memory of the late Duke standing proudly flashes by. Tolan whispers that he still doesn't know how to survive this. Kneeling on the floor in heavy shadows, he helplessly asks how he is supposed to save his house. His despair shifts into fierce determination. He vows internally to protect young Flynn at absolutely all costs, no matter what it takes. A gentle knock echoes on the door. Young Flynn calls out from the hallway. Flynn steps in, looking concerned and noting that he hasn't seen Tolan much lately. Tolan scrambles in a panic to hide his papers and compose himself, stammering for the boy to wait. He adjusts his glasses, forcing a calm, stoic expression. Flynn looks lonely and disappointed. Tolan sincerely apologizes, claiming he's just swamped with urgent matters. Flynn stands outside the closed doors, as Tolan promises to visit him properly once things settle down. In a dark, filthy dungeon, a prisoner bound in heavy iron chains screams out in desperation. Count Krissa kneels on the damp floor in tattered rags, weeping hysterically and begging for mercy. He looks up through the bars, screaming that he's been locked up for 2 months and demanding to know when they'll let him go. Back in the cave, an old priest of Amika tells Rattel they still don't know how the old general got through their barrier. Rattel explains the Duke was already unconscious when they found him and refuses to talk. A memory shows Count Krissa frantically shouting that he genuinely doesn't know how he entered the cave. The priest worry that if he's lying, Imperial forces might already be on their way to wipe them out. The old priest cold-bloodedly suggests torturing the prisoner by blinding him or cutting his ankles. Rattel just listens silently. Count Krissa continues weeping, begging to be sent home to his child. Rattel strokes his chin, carefully weighing the prisoner's fate. The old priest steps up to the bars, bluntly informing the prisoner that he will absolutely not leave this place alive. Count Krissa turns deathly pale as the priest offers him 2 choices. The ultimatum is simple: spend the rest of his life rotting in this cell or die right now. Count Krissa's jaw trembles in terror as the priest asks for his choice. Instead of cowering, Count Krissa suddenly throws his head back and bursts into loud, bitter laughter. The priest blinks in confusion. Count Krissa stops laughing, telling the priest to stop wasting time. With sharp, battle-hardened eyes, Count Krissa declares he's far too experienced to be intimidated by an empty threat. Rattel steps forward, genuinely curious, asking the old man what he means. Count Krissa flashes a confident smirk. He boldly declares that he knows Rattel and these heretics are way too soft to actually kill him.
Only 6% of you are actually subscribed. If you enjoyed this, consider liking and subscribing. It is free and you can change your mind whenever you want.